Hello and welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels. I am Evan. That's Mike over there. We have another brand new guest. We've This is the third English guest we've had in like 2 months. So
They're taking over. What's
I
going
guess
on?
they're coming back. Be careful. But we have Dave Grant here. How you doing, Dave?
I am very, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We've
I would like to point out you asked me to come on before the WTC results were announced, so this
we
is not like a.
I did. Yeah, we brought you on here to actually talk about sort of the state of the faction with Empire, which we are going to get into. But I'd figured that we would certainly have something to talk about with World Team Championships, which, as I speak, happened only finished only 2 days ago. And it's true that I did not know at the time that you would have been on the winning team. So we're going to
I would have
certainly get into
captained the
that.
winning team. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll also certainly talk about the what continues to be the most head turning list in Legion right now, which is the six act clone list that we had already gotten into talking about with Ollie a couple episodes ago. We will start on that in just a moment. Very quickly, have a couple shout outs for our patrons. We have a new patron, Cody Ingram. Thank you for joining. And then a couple of random shout outs. We have Tori Giffen and Joshua. So thank you very much for your support. I'll also point out that this week on the blog, we're going to have a sort of zoomed out look at the World Team Championships in terms of we'll look at all of the lists in detail of both the top three winning teams and then also separately the 6-0 players, not all of whom were on those top teams. There were quite a few players who went 6-0 individually, even if their teams didn't finish like quite near the top like that. But given the size of the tournament and the folks involved, I think that there's a lot to take home from it. So there will be a deep dive article about that to look into. So with that, let's transition to talking about the tournament. So there were 28 teams,
Yo,
uh, up to up. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
you forgot our most exciting new thing,
Oh
Evan.
yeah, dang it! I'm even though I'm wearing the shirt today, just so everybody can see. Mike, I appreciate you reminding me as usual, keeping me in line. But today, as we record this, that's May 27th, was the first day that we released our first TFT minis video. Uh, some of you out there, and I get it, Mike will say that you're being fools, but some of you out there prefer to have something short format when it comes to your Legion content, and so the idea of the TFT mini is to do just that. It's about 15 minutes per video, and we can use those to get into a variety of just like small topics such as upgrade choice, unit cohesion, I think is one we're going to do soon. We talk about the concept of tempo, and we also get into some list review and also some like individual unit focus. So, plan is for us to release a couple of those per week. So please do check it out on our Fifth Trooper YouTube channel. Does that about cover it, Mike?
You got it. Well
All
done.
right, sweet. I'm being such a good host over here. Okay, now let's talk about WTC. Dave, congratulations. I think we'll just like say that right off the bat. As you were on the winning team, you basically constructed two of the lists that were on the winning team. Unless did you have a hand in the Jeff or Lila's list also, or was it just you on the hat?
I would say a lot of the top tier UK players, we talk a lot about lists and help each other out in terms of developing it. The UK is quite small and we all live reasonably close together, so we meet up pretty
Yeah.
regularly. We did the same before Worlds last few years as well. So it's yeah, but the all his list was definitely mine that I gave him, and he changed two upgrades, I think. But yeah.
He had come to you in desperation to find something new, having, just like absolutely had it with playing Shadow Collective Double Bus for what, like 2 years. Understandably wanted to
Yeah, yeah.
shift to something
Ollie
different.
just goes hard on one list, and he'll only play one list for like hundreds and hundreds of games.
Yeah.
I don't know why he does it that way, but that's how he likes to do his hobbying. And unsurprisingly, after 300 or 400 games of Fury Road, he'd had enough. And yeah, looking for something new. And this was about 3 weeks before the event. So, and he normally likes hundreds of games of practice to get good with the list. So it was, we gave him something, and he had 6 practice games, and he won them all quite comfortably.
Hmm.
So it works pretty well.
Yeah. And
The list is what I'm actually taking next weekend to the UK Games Expo. So it was my list I was planning to do after the WTC, and he's stolen it off me.
is Ollie going to UKG also?
He's running it.
Okay, oh, he's running it. So
He's running it so Andy can actually play some games for once.
okay, what a nice guy Ollie
Nice.
is. Some people have said sometimes.
Not very often. He is.
No, I was
but
going to say sometimes exactly.
Ollie's such a.
Yeah. Hopefully you're on the YouTube to see the exchange that just happened. So yeah, once again, the six-eyed clone list was one of the lists, and then Jeff had a double X34, and Lila had a double snail EXD. So definitely. I'd say globally sort of attrition focused in terms of, I mean, certainly with Lila and Ollie's list, but I mean, as far as the other two goes, like, was there something about those lists that factored in to the choices you were making about the matches in WTC?
Yeah, so it was the way we did the way the team thing worked was you put up 2 lists,
Hmm.
and your opponent gets to choose who plays them, and they gave you 2 lists, and you chose who they played against.
Right.
So there's always 2 lists where you get some choice of who you're playing.
Yeah.
And so it was always like, well, what do our opponents have? And so there's certain matchups that Lila, like, you saw something like 6-eye Snows across the table. Lila's like, I don't want to play 6-eye Snows.
Right.
That's
Right.
going to be a hard time for droids. That kind of thing. So we kind of tried to protect people as much as possible. I was always thrown under the bus every round. That was part of my role as captain.
I was too.
So yeah,
It's just how it works.
makes life a bit hard sometimes. But
Yeah.
but that's so it was very much. In most rounds, there was always 1 or 2 we felt we needed to protect a bit more than the other. There was only 1 or 2 rounds where we felt we were a bit exposed with all 3, but not too bad. But also, obviously, they're very good players as well. So even though the matchups were sometimes not ideal, yeah, the guys are good enough to play around it.
Great players, and also I think an extra advantage you have over there is that because of the relative closeness of everybody, you have a lot of opportunities to do practice games. Like I know that
Yeah. So
Ollie,
as I said before, every Worlds we've had like training camps. It's normally at my house actually. You will get like 10 guys who are going to Worlds to come over and just play together all weekend. There's obviously lots of drinking as well, but it's good fun.
that sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
And so just to go over the rest of we'll just like cover who the top 5 were. So the number 2 finishing team was USA Red, that is like AKA USA Team 1, that was captained by Austin Miller. Also had Rob Mowgli, current world champion Isaiah Wallace, and Wes Wagner on that team. And then number 3 was Switzerland Team 1. So that's with Obi Hans Kenobi, Count Sudoku, Philip S., and Hans Olo. I know probably most of those are people's internet names, but if anybody on Swiss One wants to reach out with real names, then I will certainly make sure that we note that on the written article at least. USA Team 2, which was AKA Team White, Brian Bear, Joe Hicks, Luke Cook, you might have heard of him too. And Delta Dave, that's David Johnson. So obviously the USA teams 1 and 2 doing very well close to the top. You'll notice that wasn't the team that I was captaining. I'll mention that very quickly. It's a lot farther towards the bottom. And then Germany 1, which was Finn P. Mueller, Richard Rasmussen, Raik Henry, and Andreas Roeder. They finished at number 5. France 1 ended up at number 6, having dipped a little bit below their previous win at WTC. I think Dave, I think something we can all agree on is that we all of us wanted to make sure that France didn't end up at number one again, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, nobody wants the same people to win every year.
Yeah.
It's always a bit of variety, and France in particular. Um, although we were discussing this quite a lot, France were helped a lot last year because their captain Czar and his
Yes.
Ewok list is terrifying.
Yes.
He's a
Yes.
very, very good player. His Ewoks are terrifying. And in the last event, the captains was almost like double.
Hmm.
And he went 6-0, so it really, really helped his team last year. Whereas this
Yeah.
year, it's just everyone is on the same footing. So, and we allowed draws, which you can see in the results. It was yeah, a lot of draws going on.
It's kind of wild that only 4 teams had winning records because of the draw situation.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we could have lost our last round and still won the whole event, which I thought
Yeah,
was quite cool.
you
We,
guys
we were
definitely
we
won
were
by
quite a way ahead.
a margin.
But yeah,
We knew that when you played, I think it was when you played USA 2, Team White in what was it, round 5, that was actually going to be the deciding round of the tournament, and that whoever won that was
yeah. No,
basically
that
going to
was
be safe
USA
either way.
Red. We played
Oh, that
USA.
was red. Okay, okay.
Yeah, we played Team White on round 4 and beat
Yeah,
them. Then we played Team Red, and that was like probably going to be a big deciding one. We were
yeah,
ahead, but if we lost, they'd kind of go ahead of us. If we drew, we'd still be ahead. If that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. That does make
Um,
sense.
but no, we were able to. It was really close. We thought it was 2-2. Jeff's game with Wes was really, really tight. But yeah, we pulled it out.
What was so yeah, which so you went 6-0. Yeah, you didn't even have any draws. And then
Oh,
like in
well,
total
I
you
said
only
I wasn't great personally. I went 3-3, but the other guys went 17-1 between the three of them, which was just incredible.
so you were 3/4 of your team's total losses then.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So wait, who else went 6-0 then on your team?
Lila and Ollie went 6-0,
Okay.
and Jeff went 5-1.
Yeah, naturally, Lyle and Ollie would be the ones who get
Yeah,
6-0.
I mean, Lila is an amazing player. She's so good. I mean, I think she went 35. She had a win streak of 35 games on Longshanks like earlier in the year. She's played over 50 tournament games with EXD and lost one.
Yeah, when her name is mentioned in the context of like an EXD list now, and this would have been the case a year ago with the Black Sun list, but it's basically in the same way that you would talk about there being like a Freddy Krueger on the loose or something like that. It's sort of like with that level of
Yeah,
gravitas and fear.
she does. I mean, for most events now, she deliberately takes worse lists, so she doesn't just stomp everybody. Uh,
I mean that was I think that was why she took the quad lightsaber list like
yeah,
last year. Yeah,
but she
but then
still
she
won
still
three
ended up
events with
winning
it.
with it. Right. Uh yeah, so it was a great time. In general, I think that just like the best part about WTC is the fact that it is a gathering of extremely good players from a variety of countries to show up in one place, especially this year, given that, it's something that certainly has been talked about a lot on the That's My Moon podcast. We've mentioned it here a little bit, but the fact that there were no longer any like fully paid trips on offer in the Road to Worlds meant that Adepticon, it's also a little bit more expensive to travel to Milwaukee compared to Chicago, but all that put together means that Adepticon was a little bit less worldly this year than it had been the previous 2 years, especially, which is certainly a drag. And, my hope is that Adepticon and AMG can try to get together to find a way to reverse that for the next one. But given that fact, this tournament helped sort of fill a little bit of that hole in terms of having a gathering of really strong players from a variety of countries in this this neat format. But it's not a format that totally it's not a format that like allows you to say, oh, well, these results should be thrown out the window because there was a team format, because it's really just a mildly selected like matchups between individual players.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and so I think that there is a lot of value in terms of looking at it But most of all, it was just a lot of fun. Like, we went out and did a karaoke night that was hosted by Ali, of course, and that was certainly a good time. Some players in the U.S. had a little bit too good of a time there. Not gonna name names here until they until they give me the go ahead that I can shame them just a little bit. But it was amazing, and so I do want to say, especially, I mean, for anybody out there who's listening who may have an opportunity to be invited by one of the team captains for next year's event, it is totally worth it. I know that it's more expensive for people that are coming over from the U.S., especially because these events are in different places in Europe. It's going to be in Denmark next year, but it's an amazing time, and there's all sorts of like awesome individual stories that came out of this. We are going to be getting more into the like exact breakdown of what lists did well and sort of individual accolades next week so that we can sort of give it its proper focus along with talking about the Rocky Top event, which was a 60-ish player event that happened in the US, so also a very significant one. We will be getting into that next week just because this week we wanted to have time to focus on the State of the Faction Empire stuff. But I mean, real quick, Mike, are there any questions that are already sort of flitting about in your head about WTC this year that Dave and I can maybe help answer for you?
Oh, geez. No, not really. I watched all the streams,
You watched all of them. Oh yeah,
I
by the way,
did.
we should
Yeah,
mention where you can find those streams, right?
we absolutely should.
Is it the Kolakuza channel? Let me double
Co
check the
Kokalooza, I think.
Kokaluza. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not sure how easy like the YouTube search algorithm is going to make it. But what we can do is that we can put a link to it under the show notes on the YouTube part of this so that people can get to it easily. But yeah, was there anything wild that you saw when you were watching the streams, Mike?
No, not really. There was a lot of Ollie on stream. I will say that. I think he was out there at
I
least
mean, it's
twice.
it's a crazy list, right? So,
Yeah, um,
yeah, why not?
for sure. But no, I think um, format's definitely a lot better than last year, which I was excited for you guys about. As far as making sure that the
It's a lot more
captains,
fair.
yeah, significantly more fair. Um, So, congrats Dave and company on winning, and that's pretty awesome. We'll I guess see you all again in Denmark, right?
Hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah, and and hopefully you guys will also be at least some of you coming back to AdeptCon as well. Do you already know whether or not you and Ali and Andy are going to be making it back out next year?
Not sure at this stage. It's
Yeah, I mean
a
it's still got a while
there's
to
a lot
go.
of real world stuff going on with all of us, to be honest. So we'll see if it's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, in theory, we'd love to, but we'll see.
yep, fair enough. And then Dave, were there anything else that you wanted to get to or shout out about WTC before we moved on to talking Empire?
No, I mean the main thing is just huge shout out to Andy. I think Andy's still affiliated with you guys. I think into AGST. He certainly used to be,
Well, theoretically, he's still working on an article for me, although
but not so much.
it's about 2 months
but
late.
but he is yeah. I guess to say because he puts in so much time and effort into
He does, yeah.
all the events, and his wife Louisa as well.
Hmm.
They put
Oh
so
yeah,
much time
she's
and effort, and
fantastic.
it's they get nothing for it, just to do it for other people. So Andy would love to be playing at these events. So just a big shout out to those guys, massive pillars of the community over in the UK. So
Right, because it's WTC and also the previous MKGT, now Chopper Base Open.
yeah.
He also completely runs that, and
Yeah, and he TOs all of the grand tournaments, all the GTs, because they're
yeah.
done by a company in the UK, and he runs them all for them. Occasionally, he farms out refereeing to Ollie, so he can play like one event a year or something.
I'm just imagining Ali being called over as a judge and just like sort of wincing at the idea, like if he came over to be a judge in my game, and I would just be like, I know this isn't going my way.
He does. I mean, he does accept bribes, but yeah.
Hey, that's when they're on your team.
Yeah, you just gotta make sure. Okay, yeah, I agree. Thank you very much to Andy and Louisa for doing the usually thankless work, but we can give our thanks here to help assuage that a little bit. So, Dave, let's talk about Empire. Empire, to set the stage. Uh, Obviously, this was a faction that was doing the poorest going into Adepticon, just like from a sort of faction win percentage basis, and generally that means that we're talking about like a 46-ish% win rate in the sort of 3 months like previous to Adepticons. That would be after the November points update when like Anakin and 501st and EXD were knocked down a little bit. And then at Adepticon, you were one of a few folks who made it to the top 64, and then ended up going 2-1 on the elimination day. Uh, and so there was already sort of like a lot of talk about the idea that Empire sort of needed help as a faction, and then this thing happened where 2 units were taken away, IRG and Palpatine. One can certainly argue quite a bit about what like how much those units were helping the faction anyway. But certainly the mood for Empire players has been a little bit on the low end. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that we brought you on as somebody who obviously knows the faction very well, and has your finger on the pulse of it to talk about sort of where things are and how players can sort of squeeze all of the juice that they can out of Empire lists. And I actually think that a place that we can start, just to sort of like paint broadly about what's going on with Empire, is to ask you like what was the list that you ended up taking as your Empire list to WTC, and what was your reasoning behind it?
Yeah, so I mean, this is not a good example to start with because the list wasn't great. I didn't play a single game before I submitted the list or after I submitted
Mm,
the list. So it is based on effectively units I haven't used for a while, and I fancied putting them on the table.
okay,
Um,
fair enough.
so what actually happened was, in WTC you have a rule where you can't have duplicates of the same unique
Right.
character between different factions, and uh, myself and Jeff both had a list with Din Djarin in it,
Hmm.
and I didn't realize until about an hour before the deadline. So at 11 o'clock
Well
at
done.
night, I was in my room just writing a list of whatever I could come up with off the top of my head, so I could submit the list before the deadline. What I ended up with was Vader. I've played Vader probably at least 2/3 of my game of Legion, maybe more. I've been using Commander Vader.
Hmm.
Always Commander Vader, just very important.
These days
These
we all
days,
agree.
it's push and burst are staple to him.
Yeah.
I've been using with Saber Throw throughout 2.6, so I think it's probably the way to go. He did have improvised orders, but it's not essential, just something to have. It's occasionally useful. Um, I had Bosk. Again, the main reason for that was because I haven't used him for a while, and I quite like Bosk.
Hmm.
So he's not bad. He's not what you get with somebody like Din Djarin is a playmaker, somebody who can really make things happen. Whereas Bosk he's just a steady guy. He sits at the back, he plinks away, he does a bit of damage throughout the game. So he kind of supports you throughout the game, but he doesn't make any really big plays.
Right.
He can occasionally do something with a bounty or like a double tap, but it's very rare that opportunity actually presents itself. The rest of my list, I had 8 core. So I had 2 of the best core that you can get in Empire, which is Black Suns.
Oh, I thought you were going to say riot
Um,
control for a second there.
no, 2 Black Suns.
We'll
They
get
are
to them.
genuinely the best core. We'll come on to, I guess, more details, but I had 2 of them, one with shotgun, one with magnet. The shotguns are definitely better, but I had a bit of a points constraint, so I put one down to a magnet.
Yeah.
Um, I had 2 Iron Snows, solid units. I had 2 Naked Shores and 2 Mortars.
Hmm.
The premise behind the list was, and then the rest of it was showing 2 Dewbacks with the range 4 gun.
Okay.
So the premise behind the list was, I knew for the team event I would be getting thrown under the bus. I'd be playing lots of people kind of who were quite happy to take an empire and would fancy a win. So I wanted to take something a little different, and it was actually designed for Vader not to infiltrate. So Vader, every game, he just walks onto the table, gets his surges, and so it's range for Plink, and then the counter punch from Vader, Black Suns, and Jubex.
Did you find that it was worth it to not do that infiltrate, or did you end up sort of wishing you infiltrated sometimes?
Because I designed the list was not designed to be aggressive. So if you're doing an aggressive list, so if I've got Vader, if I've got Din Djarin, and I've got medics,
Yeah.
then I would always infiltrate Vader because I'd play it very aggressively.
Right.
If you're not intending to be aggressive, then if you infiltrate Vader, either he just stays roughly where he is behind some line of sight blockers anyway, or you push him out and he's very isolated, all on his own. And I love Vader, but he can't take on everybody by himself. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, because I had a single commander, I needed him back near the troops for the courage bubble as well.
Sure.
So, so the list was designed for him to walk on, but I still like on bunker assault. I was still blowing up people's bunkers turn 2. So you can press the button and go aggro if you want to, if the opportunity presents itself.
Right.
But you absolutely don't need to. So I thought that was a good thing to do with him, and it worked reasonably well. Weekend, there was never a situation where I thought, oh, I wish I'd infiltrated.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that helps in terms of sort of setting the stage of where your head has been with regards to list building with Empire lately, and I think that we can transition from that to talking about the slots individually. Like we obviously just talked about Vader. I think most people would say that an Empire list, like it certainly will often start with Vader, and some other folks may say that it starts and ends with Vader. Like I guess I would just ask, like, where is your, if we're thinking from a competitive standpoint, like you want to like try to win a GT with a list, do you think that there are non-Vader Empire lists out there that you think can work? Aside from Tempest Force, which we'll get to, which is an obvious exception since Vader's
I don't
not
think
even
Tempest
allowed.
Force would win a GT. For me, it always depends how you define competitive. Competitive, if you want a winning record at a GT, you could definitely do that without Vader.
Sure.
If you think you're capable to win a GT, you shouldn't be taking my advice or anybody's advice. You should know what you're doing. And so it's very much what the player can dictate it. To me, any really good list starts with the plan. You can have, I want to build a list around X, whether it's Vader or Iden or Moff Gideon or Veers, or you pick whatever you want to build your list around, and you can build a very strong list around that thing. But you have to know what the plan is. Certainly on list discussion channels, I see a lot of people just, what do you think of this list? It's like, well, I don't know, so I don't know what your plan is. I don't know how you're planning to use this thing, therefore it's hard to comment on it. So I guess you don't have to take Vader, but he is absolutely a strong piece. But I've taken Vader throughout, for 5 years, whenever he was really good, when he was really bad, pre-burst of speed, pre all the upgrades he's got now, and I would still quite happily take him and do pretty well with him. So Vader's my boy, and now everybody thinks he's great as well, which is good. But I think the others, you can do something definitely with them. There are other options in there, but you just need to know what you're doing. But he brings a lot to the list.
Mike, along those lines, I'm wondering, when you think about bringing Vader in a list, there is a certain connotation that comes with that in terms of your command card choices. Do you what are the command cards that you think are actually like leave behindable if you are going to be taking Commander Vader in your list?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think to start, I think Fear and Dead Men is like pretty easy leave behind. I think Master of Evil and Implacable are like ones that you have to take. And Darkness Descends probably fits in there too, unless like I think Dave said, you've got like some sort of game plan around like Implacable and Master of Evil are just kind of insane in the New Legion. Master of Evil can just like win you a point by like playing the card, which is pretty crazy.
I
I
guess
think
with
there.
new ways also, if you don't have like if you don't have a plan for that in terms of what you would be pushing forward with it, it's not necessarily
Yeah,
going to do a
new
ton for
ways
you.
is only good in synergy.
Yeah.
So on its
Yeah,
own,
yeah,
you'd never take it. You're if you're taking dewbacks, uplinks, dewbacks, potentially Dinjar, and somebody that's you're building around that card, or you don't take it.
yeah. I think like there's some probably unfound stuff with super squads and new ways to motivate them. Um, I suspect, being able to like double move shoot with some big chunky stormtroopers could be good.
I have looked at combining super squads with Moff Gideon, and you can triple move in the shoot.
That's a lot. It costs
It
2
gets,
wounds, which is
it just
also a
get
lot.
crazy. It
Yeah.
gets crazy.
Um, Definitely. I mean, like, there's something there, right? Like, whether it is worth what you're paying for, the cost you're paying in addition to points
Right.
is steep for sure.
Mm.
But those are things when you've got command cards like that or abilities like Ruthless that allow you to do things that just can't happen otherwise. That like those are powerful effects.
I'll also shout out that Vader's Might. Obviously, it has a lot of utility when it comes to just like moving somebody off of an objective after they've activated, which is always or like very often going to have utility. But I should mention that with the very feared six act clone list, one of the things that Ali was kind of afraid of was the idea of Vader's Might being played on him, given that it is an effect that completely it expands for how many minis are on the unit, and it completely gets around any kind of defensive tech and utility that you have. It just like hands out wounds. So that
Yeah.
was one of the things he was afraid of, right, Dave?
No, definitely. I mean, it's quite interesting how things that niche use can be very, very powerful. Yeah, he was very afraid of Vader because it's one of the things the six tack list is, between Vader's Might and then Implacable, Vader
Hmm.
double swinging. Vader can kill two of those big squads in 2 turns.
Yeah,
That's what we were very worried about. And so when we talk about protecting the list, it was we protected him from Vader. We protected Ollie from Vader. Everyone, apart from against Luke, because Ollie really wanted to play against Luke.
I'm
But
sure he
then, but
and
did.
and he did beat Luke, but I understand it was a very close game.
it was, yeah, as you'd expect.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course. All right, so yeah, like I think Vader is. It makes sense that that's the one you would start out with, and it's sort of interesting that now that the Emperor is gone, like Vader truly is the only like big honkin' point spend on a commander that Empire has. The
yeah,
person who is actually kind of weirdly second in line, like the second most expensive, is Iden. Iden did get some changes with the recent update. Her guns have both been incorporated into her unit cards, so you don't have to choose either or anymore, which is certainly nice. The ID10 got like a little bit of an upgrade with the free observe one action. Um, I think she did get a little bit more expensive
She
to make
just
up for this.
you just have to take the cost of the gun. Before you were
Yeah.
like, I could take a cheap item. Now you
That's
don't have
right.
that
Yeah.
option.
So
Yeah.
the triple white blaster with Pierce one is no longer an option, which is in a way kind of a downgrade in terms of versatility. But she did also gain a command slot, of course, which has a little bit like it's always nice for improvised orders. But I know that some
yeah.
players are going to be sad you can't use that with aggro tech anymore. But yeah, Dave, when it comes to Iden, um, what do you think is the context in which she fits into a list these days?
I think she's okay. She's not great. As an individual piece, she's okay. It's still tack strike.
Right, right.
It's can you leverage tack strike, and there's really wacky builds you can do there to get like a lot, even with the reduced H couplings, a lot of units benefiting from tack strike. You can have
Hmm.
death troopers in gav tanks jumping out and just being terrifying, and these things you can do that. But tack strike's always been, it's got to work really, really well. You've got to get ahead of on the attrition after that card, because so much of the list is based around that card.
Yeah.
And so you've got to get a list that works without it. I think Wes was running Vader with Iden, so it's like a tack strike scenario with Iden and then Vader as well, which is
Hmm.
quite interesting. again, the challenge is well, with Vader, going back to Vader is just command cards. So
Right.
which 3-pip do you drop? But Iden herself, yeah, I think she's solid. I think she would if you she would partner quite well with Krennic. The list Empire generally you really want Compel in the list. It's unless you're going 3 Naked Core, which
Yeah,
is a valid option.
sure.
Um, then yeah, you want Compel to try and keep you guys moving. And her Courage 3 is quite good. It's quite strong. She's okay. She's hard to kill. I think with ID 10, she's solid. The 3 extra white dice up close help, and the shielded help. So there's Iden's solid, but she's not. She has the same problem that the vast majority of the Empire have, which we probably come on to as you go through. Is everything is overcosted by 5 to 10 points.
I think
Almost the entire faction is
I agree. We're
slightly
going to
too
keep running into
expensive.
that.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's I don't want to keep kind of referring to that every time, but almost everything is a little bit too expensive for what it is. I think the main problem is the way Empire plays isn't, or historically played, isn't quite as good. In 2.6, everything's much closer, and they were always better at standing off.
yeah,
And they just haven't updated the points yet to reflect that things just aren't as good as they were. The only unit that feels like is actually pointed correctly is probably the Dewbacks, which is why they're so popular in Empire lists. I don't think it's because Dewbacks are amazing. I think it's because they're actually pointed correctly.
and to put that in perspective, I know that sometimes people have the temptation to use Iden as sort of just like a lone wolf operative thing to toss into your Empire list without necessarily having like a bunch of stuff that you can use for tax strike. And to sort of point out why I don't think that that's a great idea. So Iden with the Secret Droid is 130. Something that is also 130 is Din with a jetpack, a flame projector, and a Beskar spear. And
Yeah,
you compare the relative efficiency of those two units, and it's quite vast in terms of the difference.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. So once you get a few upgrades, she's kind of she's more expensive than a weak Jedi, and almost as much as like she's the same cost as Commander Luke,
yeah,
and she is not as good as Luke Skywalker. Like
yeah,
so, it's yeah. So I think she's okay. She's solid. Her tax strike is still an amazing card, but a little bit overpriced.
yeah. And we just mentioned Krennic. You know, Krennic does have some synergy with Iden in terms of the fact that his entourage Death Troopers allows you to have a tax strike with 4 big units instead of
Yep.
the usual 3. So that's certainly a thing that you can do. But and you also mentioned Compel. Um, I think we can maybe talk about these together just because there is another sort of like cheapish Empire officer with Exemplar being Veers. When you think about Krennic and Veers, um, I guess like how do you think that those factor into list building with regards to the choices that you're making? Like, what
Yeah,
are the
I
lists
think
that would do better with one or the other?
you always take Krennic unless you're taking a big vehicle. So Krennic is pretty much better in every way, unless you're bringing a Canadian ST or a Gav tank that can really benefit from Viz's guidance vehicle.
You feel the same way, Mike?
Yeah, I think generally, I think if you're also taking Vader, I think, the main reason to take Krennic is Compel for me. And if you've already got that, like it's like less of a thing. But with the fact that you generally need 2 courage bubbles in most of the deployments now, like having multiple sources of Compel is like pretty good too. So
Yeah.
Veers just doesn't bring enough, I think, enough different over Krennic, now that Krennic's like got spotted natively and stuff, that he's a vehicle commander, and I think Jay's right on that front.
I when the new Veers in 2.6 was first revealed, I think that a lot of people like started getting dreams about just like tossing standbys onto ATSTs and then watching the fun ensue. It's not something that we're seeing a lot, and I do think that a big part of the issue is order control, and like the timing of Veers being able to activate early enough that guidancing a standby onto an ATST, but also, you know, if you do that, then it means that the ATST needs to already have acted, or that you're going to be able to like save it for the last activation so you don't waste the standby by just like having it do an action on its activation. Um, I mean, Dave, have you like thought about the utility of guidance vehicle on Veers, like, and do you think that there's things that players maybe haven't thought about yet when it comes to how to really get the juice out of that?
Um, I'm sure there is. I mean, I've given it some thought, but beyond just chucking a standby on there, which is the most obvious thing.
Right.
Obviously, there's other things you can do with guidance in terms of moving them, which could have some objective play. To especially like things like the Gav tank, you can try and catch people out a little bit because things like on recover the research, the Gav tank can cover 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And if you activate it early, and then people think their point is safe, then the guidance tank and it can cover both of them. You can catch people out and score in ways they're not your opponent's not expecting. So there's utility there. I don't think it's stellar, but guidance is not a bad keyword at all. The problem is if you're guidancing vehicles because it's an action, he's not really doing much else. Because
Yeah.
it's very rare you can just leave him completely still. Again, the way 2.6 plays, it's very mobile. Things are always moving around. In old Legion, you could just stay still, spotter, guidance, and that's amazing. But I think most turns you need to be moving somewhere as well.
Yeah.
And so you want to choose between spotter and guidance, which doesn't feel great.
And then you're also not shooting at all.
Yeah, and you're not shooting at all, and you're not doing actions to use your exemplar properly.
Right.
So Veers kind of almost wants to be doing too many things. He's very action hungry. He wants to move, he wants to shoot, he wants the guidance, he wants the spotter, and he's like, oh, I can do one.
Right. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. That seems like that's the hard part. And then of course, if he was allowed to guidance vehicles that weren't ground vehicles, I think that there would be a lot more to talk about. Like you could be, guidancing a speed 3 lat to go quite far across the table or something fun like that. But sadly, they thought ahead of that and
I
made it so that he can only do ground vehicles. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I do think that the problem with Veers is almost that Tempest Force kind of exists. Like we outside of like all the points that we just made, like the best place to use the best Empire vehicle is Tempest Force. And um like if there was a different ground vehicle that was also good in Empire, I feel like Veers might actually see the table. Like if they had
Hmm.
like an ATRT equivalent or something to that extent, like I feel like this might be a different conversation, but the only other real option is like the Gav, and the Gav's not.
Oh, we're gonna talk about the Gav. Don't worry.
I'm a fan of the Gav, but there we go. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's right. And then the last unique commander for Empire. We're obviously excited for the customizables to come out, but we don't know what those are yet. We'll have a whole episode on
I've
those, I'm
heard
sure.
some strong rumors, and for Empire players that are listening, the world will change when they come out.
You got stuff to look forward to, huh? Is that
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
saying? That's good. That's good because yeah, Empire needs a little bit of happy juice. But
Yeah.
the last one for us to talk about is Moff Gideon. I think that the main feature, as far as I can tell, with Moff Gideon is that he has the ruthless keyword. He's something that comes up. I guess the other feature is of course like his synergy with Dark Troopers for lists that want to do that. But Dave, have you looked at Moff Gideon a lot in non-remnant lists out of curiosity?
Yeah. I said so. It's again leaning into the concept. So, I was speaking to one of the guys who plays on. It was a Spanish guy who plays for Team Wales called Jose. He's just started his a YouTube channel. He's doing some unboxing videos on the Superstorm squads.
Oh,
So he asked
cool.
me
Yeah.
to prepare a list for him that focused on Superstorms, and so how to really leverage that unit, make them the star of the show. Um, so yeah, I think Moff Gideon is something there, as Mike mentioned earlier, kind of ruthless. There's some things you can do around that can be really strong.
Hmm.
his his 2 and 3 pip are good. So his 2 pip, obviously, you've got Dark Troopers, teleporting them across the table. It gives such a headache for your opponent because they often have to think about where they may teleport to. Really strong opponents usually don't give them a good space to go, so you often don't end up using it. But it just gives them a real headache all game. The 3 pip is disgusting. The reworded 3 pip where you give 3 unit standbys is really strong.
Yeah, it's
especially
gross.
Yeah,
Especially if they can't be shot off.
Yeah, 3 Dark Troopers with standbys is just horrible.
Yeah,
And yeah, so obviously you combine that with Krennic, who's given them 2 standbys the turn before,
right.
and it's just disgusting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's got some action there. But again, the problem is, aside from those kind of tricks he can do, he's not a strong killing people. You know,
Yeah.
his profile is okay. It's not great.
Do you think the Darksaber is worth it?
Maybe. Depends on the list.
Yeah, of course.
Especially with IRG gone, it's more viable. So if you've got him in the list anyway, and you want some kind of counter melee threat, then yeah, I would put it in, because the IRG used to be part of that role, and you could use Riot Troopers, but the Darksaber is just better and easier if you have Moff Gideon in the list.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I wouldn't like. I don't think it's essential on him, depending what you plan to do with him. But it's not a bad investment. But again, he's already pretty expensive. So
yeah, Mike, any thoughts on Gideon that we have mentioned already?
I think you got to take the Darksaber. I don't think for 100 points, his profile sucks. Like, he is really, really not good.
In terms of like the fighting party, man.
Yeah, but like most of his abilities are things that don't require actions.
That don't require
right?
actions.
So,
Ruthless
like,
and it's 2 pip and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, the problem is if you take the Darksaber, you really want to take his 1 pip.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
he doesn't have charge or relentless.
Yeah,
so
that's
then,
true.
For sure.
And then okay, so but then it depends what other commanders you've got. So if you've just taken Gideon and you're going to take his 1 pip, then the Darksaber becomes much more valuable.
Sure.
It does.
But if he is in there mostly as a utility piece for Ruthless, then it's not going to be as valuable. But then, of course, I think the question is,
move shoe. His pistol is not terrible. You know, his move shoe. He's got an aim. He's got sharpshooter 1. It's Pierce 1. You know, he can blink off a couple of ones every turn. I know Mike doesn't like that, but it's
I don't know. It's just like
not terrible.
That's what I would expect out of like a 70-point Agent Callus, you know?
I agree, but that's not why you're taking him.
Yeah,
sure.
And if you take him, if you're taking him for the Darksaber, you're going to be disappointed. There's 115 point for no charge, no relentless, 5 black, Pierce 1 is like,
he's definitely not. He's definitely sort of similar to Iden. He's not a piece you should be taking if you're just like trying to squeeze some like combat benefit out of him.
No, but both of them are very much. You're building a list around their abilities, whether that's with Dark Troopers or with Ruthless or Attack Strike or whatever it is. Your concept is around them. They're not something you throw in there to do a bit of damage. That's what the objectives are for.
Totally agree. All right, so that covers the commanders that Empire can take. We will actually be ending with operatives so that we can sort of have the character talk on both ends of the sandwich. But I think that we're going to transition to talking about core. We'll get to the mercs after we talk about the mainline core, because the mercs are particularly relevant for Empire, one in particular. But let's just start with the classic. Or maybe what I'll say first is, obviously, just like with everything else, you want to know what is the core idea behind the list before you think about what core troopers you're going to be putting in there. But if you're running a list that like where, let's say, for example, an Iden Tack Strike list where the core themselves wouldn't really be the focus as much as you're going to be pouring a lot of points into special forces, or another list where the core are going to be there just to kind of exist. Like, what's sort of like your default idea of what core should be in a list that mostly cares about its other units?
Yeah, depends on points. It's either snows or iron snows.
Okay, so if you only have room for naked troopers, you would go with snows.
Yeah, and if you want, and unless you've got a particular reason for the others, Iron Snow's, if you're just like a unit with a heavy, Iron
Yeah.
Snow's the best.
I agree, and I think that Mike, I remember early on in 2.6, I felt like the kid in the back of the class, and I was saying, I think these new Ion Snows are pretty good, and you and Kyle were like, they're just they're just Ion Snow Troopers, though. I think that all of us like were had the old Ion Snows in the back of our head a little bit, the ones that had to recover in order to be able to shoot again, and that was pretty god awful. But Mike, have you come around to Ion Snows being the sort of the default core choice in Empire?
I mean, I don't know. I think they're probably the best thing you could be taking. I don't think they're still not good enough for my taste personally.
Well, that's
So,
if you compare them to clone troopers, then fair enough. But clone troopers,
it's a little
I
bit
just
unfair.
yeah, I guess I mean like I don't know. The thing that scares me with snows specifically is that if they get suppressed and don't have access to the compel bubble, you can get into trouble like hot water very quickly. With like getting to points and stuff. Like a speed one move, the difference between a speed one and a speed two move can be pretty impactful if you've only got one action.
I think if you've got an Empire list where there's three arguments. That one is if you don't have compel in some way around your troops, what are you doing?
I agree. I
That's
no
fair.
doubt, no doubt. I just like,
Um, but
sometimes
also
your compel
snows are
piece.
particularly good because of
Yeah.
steady. If they're a little bit isolated from the commanders, you can just do the peekaboo thing where you're not taking return fire. You climb on a building, you shoot something, you climb back behind the building.
Yeah.
It's a very strong player's way to keep them safe. Um, I, I very rarely have issues where I really need them to run to a point. Um, and yeah, and just being able to compel, move, shoot, recover is so good.
Yeah, that's really strong.
It's
That's
not.
that's that feels like cheating a little bit when they're in the exact right spot to be able to do it. Yeah, so I definitely like the ions a lot. Just I mean, there's a lot of droids out there. There's at least a few shields out there, and there's certainly a lot of vehicles too. But even if you have none of that, it's not a terrible weapon in terms of its dice
No, it's
profile.
two black white critical one.
Yeah,
It's impact one.
an impact one,
Um,
right? So it gives you anti-vehicle utility even outside of the ion keyword,
yeah,
which is pretty nice.
yeah. I like T-21 Storms as well. They're probably my other favorite unit. They're 4 points cheaper, which sometimes in a list, especially if we've got a few units, so that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Um, but
So
yeah,
talking about storms, I agree that the T-21 seems like sort of the default choice. And there are other heavy weapons for storms. I think what the DLT is that's the cheapest.
well,
Uh,
DLT is the same as the T-20 on the both 20
okay,
points.
oh wow, God, it
Uh,
doesn't feel like those should be the same.
yeah, there's definitely an argument with the DLT. Um, turn one, you go in DLTs are great. You move on, range 4, you can have a
Yeah,
plink, it's lovely.
it's a reliable
After
reinforced
turn
shot.
one, you'd rather have a T-21.
Sure, that makes sense. And then how about the other two? As like when it comes to the RT-97, you're comparing that to the DLT in terms of just being like a range
Yeah, so
four
if I want a
weapon.
range 4 poke, I'd rather have the DLT. And
Yeah,
if I'm wanting something to blast away, I'd rather have the T-21. So the RTC is kind of mix of the two. You get some range 4, you get 4 dice. It's okay, but I'd rather go one way or the other. And the RTC is actually more expensive. It's 2 points more.
yeah. It feels like it should be the cheapest out of all of them, which would
Well,
make
the
it
rocket
a little
launcher
bit more
should
of
be
a
because
choice.
cumbersome is just garbage.
Yeah, so I was about to get to that one.
We can
Yeah,
all agree on that.
this podcast has certainly harped on the nature of the cumbersome keyword and how it is neither fun nor good. So which makes it like basically the worst keyword in the game because you have a bad time and you also end up having an ineffective list by including it. It certainly had its time in Old Legion with Blizzard Force in particular, with the heavy response unit, it was a part of a like relatively inexpensive, like huge range 4 hit in a game where you didn't have to move onto the board with your first action. But
Yeah.
obviously that has changed since then. And I don't see the place for, any of the core that have cumbersome weapon keywords
No.
in the game at all.
No, because if you because it's turn one means you've got a double move to go onto the point. So next
Right.
turn you can just shoot, and then if you've double moved onto the point, you're really exposed.
Yeah.
Because more normally you kind of move on, wait a bit, and then next turn you move shoot onto the points to try and protect yourselves a little bit. And if you're just starting round, halfway through round one, you're 12 inches onto the table, you're in for a bad time.
Yeah. And so it's funny that, I think they kept it. I think they may have increased the cost a little bit from where it had been because they took away the need to untap it
I think
now. But
it was 16 before.
yeah, that's right. So it went up 6 points, but it is still yeah, but it's still just it has cumbersome, so it just doesn't have a place. Um, Speaking of range 4 though, shore troopers, they had pretty significant changes to their unit in the change to 2.6. The basically taking away target, which was a huge thing to take away from them. And then ironically adding in long shot, which requires a name. So it was sort of it seemed to me like it was a little bit cruel to basically say, well, if you really want to get the utility out of this unit, then you need the thing that we took away from you. But like you did take two double shore, double mortar in your
Yeah,
WTC list.
yeah,
So
that wasn't a
what do
good
you think is
idea.
their
It was
play?
rubbish.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, tell me about shores. What is their general
Well,
place in the
the
faction right
the
now?
models I have for Shores are painted really well, and I really like the models.
Okay, cool.
So I took them to the event. No, no. So I think, yeah, the mortars are really weak. Um, they didn't do much at all. I think a shore squad, you've got to, if you've got a plan for them, maybe like a very specific plan. But I said they're just very aim hungry now.
Hmm.
Um, and you don't want to be designing your list around giving them aims because they're not strong enough to be able to do that.
Right.
They also suffer from the same problem that some other units have, where AMG have really overvalued prepared positions when they're doing their points working out.
Yes.
Um, so it's infiltrate is disgusting in 2.6. Prepared positions, yeah, it's just a good way to get yourself killed, unless you're quite cagey with it. So
Terrain dependent, obviously. Sometimes prepared positions is awesome if you have the right terrain, but it's not as common as you might even
it can be,
think.
but again, you need to be hidden behind the train, then you kind of move onto it to shoot with an
Exactly.
extended
Yeah.
range. But you're short, so you're moving, so you're not aiming, and so you're not getting your long shot, and it's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So I said, I was talking to some people building lists based around shore troopers, where you give them offensive push so they can join at the aim turn one, and you have exemplar characters to give them more aim. So you're building your whole list around it, which makes them okay, but it becomes like, well, that's it, and it's you'll do reasonably well turn one and two, but then people are just running into naked core or pretty weak core. So I think maybe, but they're one of the ones that's very overpriced currently. I think a super squad could be interesting if it's sensibly priced.
Yeah, as of right now, it might be it might be the worst super squad in the game.
Yeah, it's 122 points for 9 shore troopers. It's just like, oh my gosh.
I mean, I guess there was concern about the fact that like, well, you spend one aim and how many guns are you turning into range 4 guns at all the same time? But it's still bad.
Yeah, yeah. So if they resolve the cost issue, I think there's potential place for them in the future, but for now they're too expensive for what they are.
And the heavy does not change the math, right? Like as far as you think.
No, I mean heavy's okay, but again, it's overpriced.
It's
It's been
super
overpriced for a
expensive.
while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so with the heavy, that squad's 154 points. That's the same as one of all these super squads, which it's like, yeah, that's no.
Yeah, yeah, that's like the same as an Ahsoka Super Squad. It's sort of ridiculous when you compare it like that. Mike, do you think Shores have any place in Imperial armies right now?
they're a speed one core unit without steady. The fact, I yeah, no. The answer is no, absolutely
you,
not.
you talk about suppression tokens being painful on snow troopers. Well, like think of how painful it is on a short trooper. Well, you don't even get the free shot with your move. You just like, it's nothing.
Yeah, I don't, again, I think Dave pointing out prepared positions is like heavily overvalued. Like they changed the prepared position core units to have lower speeds, which seems just not necessary, I think.
Yeah, it is not a thing that you want to do. Usually, is to tell your opponent exactly where a big part of your army is going to be before they even have to make any deployment decisions. On top of the fact that they can just be shot, so it's like two things that hurt you when you utilize prepared positions. So let's talk about it. There is a fourth.
That said, I will just say on the shores,
Yeah,
Andy Terrell was running a list a few weeks ago that had, I think it was like 6 naked core, 6 mortars, and that because there's a whole build around suppressing people that can work,
if you're
but
flooding the
it's
board,
got
then
massive
yeah,
weaknesses, but it can work.
yeah. I think that the rebel spam list when it comes to just like spamming veterans and Mark II is just a lot better at that concept.
It is
Generally,
the Empire one's about suppressing people, and then
yeah,
it's
yeah,
really matchup dependent. If you come against the heavy list, it's like, oh well, I just lose.
or droids.
Yeah, I'll draw you like
Yeah,
sad
it's like
time.
whoops. Yep. um, so yeah, there is a fourth Empire core. So let's talk about it. It is the Stormtrooper Riot Squad. It
the
has
Empire,
been
the
the
Empire's answer to Sleeper Cell.
Oh yeah, some may say that it was given the fact that it was released alongside Sleeper Cell, it definitely was the butt of a lot of jokes and talking about the relative point efficiency between a Sleeper Cell with an astromech, which I believe is 80 points, and then a
75,
Riots. What's that?
75,
75 with the
75.
astromech?
Yeah,
Yeah.
riots are more expensive.
Oh my goodness. Man. See, like I accidentally made the point even better. So yeah, you compare that to a riot squad with a KX unit, which is 80 points, and the relative efficiency of those units is basically oceanic. Um, so there is sort of there's this idea that festers, and I hear it on podcasts sometimes, where I'll see some hot takes on Discord where there's this desire for people to tell people like Mike and I that we're the real morons and that there is something to unlock with Riot Control Squad that we're just not seeing. So this is your chance, Dave, to tell Mike and I that we're morons by telling us
Well,
that there
I
is
mean, you
really a
are
use for them.
morons, but not on this instance. So,
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it.
no, I mean, the models are gorgeous, beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful
totally,
models. They look
totally.
really, really well. Um, it's yeah, I don't know. They're just massively overpointed for what they are. Um,
I do think that they can be changed with like they can be quote fixed with points only, and that they don't need like a total
yeah,
revamp
yeah.
of
I
the
mean, they're
card.
not. Yeah, they have a use in the list,
Yeah,
especially with IRG gone. They
right.
definitely have a use in the list. But 80 points for that use is just like no, no, thank you. But I am a big proponent of list innovation.
Yeah.
And obviously, I have my ideas. There's some concepts that I work through. I haven't worked out how to make a really good list based around riot squads yet. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I'd love for somebody out there to make it
Ma
work. But
Many
I
have
can't do it yet.
tried using either or both of Gideon and a lat with a speed 3 lat to like deliver them close to the battlefield. Uh, and and then I know that what Brendan of previously of Inglorious Blasters fame took them to a tournament up in Pennsylvania that you were at, Mike.
Yep.
But I think even he said that it was a failed like it was a great experiment and it failed. And I've heard the same from many other Riot Control players.
He just loves those models, man. We
I mean, they're
every
great. They're
every
awesome.
every tournament I come to, he's playing like more Riot controls than he was last time. And like they're beautiful, but he's like, yeah, they're not good. And he's trying,
I,
But
I'm
that's not.
just
But it's not a reason not to take them. Take them if you enjoy them. Take them if
yeah,
you
of
enjoy
course,
it.
of
But
course.
if you're willing to really do well, probably not
I'm
until.
just convinced that Part of Gas just sent us the crappy version of Riot Control like he did on Gorman, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Like Dave, have you been watching the Andor show?
I have. I don't want to do spoilers. It's still a little bit new, but
Yeah,
yes, I
we're
have.
not going
It's
to do
it's
spoilers.
amazing. It's really
Yeah,
good.
it is amazing. I'll just say that there were some parts of that show that both reinforced and anti-reinforced the relative value of riot control squads as they exist now. So
Yeah,
something to look forward to if you watch the
yeah.
show.
I think the only place for them is if you in certain list builds, um, three naked units of riot squads as a bit of a counterpunch. If the rest of your army is more gunliney,
Yeah,
maybe. But yeah,
because it's
that'll be it.
something that will help contest points and actually be productive while it's doing that. But even then, it is 50 points for a naked squad, and
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I mean, they should be the same as the like 42, the same as the others,
yeah,
and the KXs should be half the cost ish. Then
I
they're a good unit or a
I
reasonable unit to include in lists.
right.
Um, and they're never going to be good, but they'll be reasonable for the points.
Well, they could be that's the thing though, is that if they get overcorrected, then they could suddenly become
Yeah,
good
if you get
good.
six squads of them with 6 wounds
Exactly.
each,
I don't know. Like
combined with Vader, Din, three Dewbacks, then it starts to be interesting.
at the end of the
AMG
day,
has an
like
interesting
this
job.
the squad is still just like four black, two red, and melee, right? Like, and that's if it's a full health.
Yeah, but if you've paid like if you get them cheap enough, so if you say there's 60 points with the KXs,
Sure.
and so you have six of them for 360 points, that's okay. That's okay.
It does have charge, which is one of the most valuable
Yeah,
keywords in the
charge, red
game.
saves, 6 wounds per squad. At that point, you go, yeah, actually, that's not bad. And you
Yeah,
get hold
yeah.
lines once you get in. There is surging red saves. So there's
Maybe
an element, there's a point level where they become good, and a point level where they become a little bit too good, like most things.
Yep, yep. I am sure that there is going to be a time for riot control in the future, so I wouldn't like tell anybody to not buy it, especially because the models are awesome. It's just that May time maybe this fall. Um, so let's transition to talking about special forces. There are basically
Yeah.
three options, technically five, but we'll start with the one that's less complicated. Death Troopers, they obviously go along with Krennic. They have, of all of these special forces, they have the biggest range four hit that you can do, which certainly allows them to be one of those units that can contribute very early. And so, like, you can build lists that are designed around three or maybe even four, like full squads of Death Troopers that are all like giving the big range four smack at the beginning of the game. Um, do you like how how viable of a strategy do you think that is to like really pour all of your points into Death Troopers to have like a huge alpha strike?
I'm not sure the Alpha Strike works, purely because, like, not as an Alpha Strike, because you get range force, you can move on. I guess you'd probably have to give him recon intel as
You'd
well
have to
to
give him
mix the
recon to give
yeah.
him like to make it so
Yeah,
that your
and then there are
opponent,
110 points a squad.
yeah,
And if you're doing that, okay, you probably want offensive push them so they get aim so they can reroll four of their dice. So that's 116 points a squad.
it gets to a lot.
So it becomes the same problem I mentioned right at the start. Is they're just too expensive. It's not a bad strategy. It's a good thing to do. Um, but they're just a bit expensive. So the rest of your list is a bit weak because you paid so many points for these things. Um,
That being
yeah,
said, there is the other option of running just like, for instance, one squad with DTF-16, which gives you a compel that is more likely to be like forward on the battlefield than maybe Krennic is, which will
yeah.
certainly
No.
extend your
I
compel
think I
range.
think there's absolutely lists that can use them that are perfectly good.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, if you want to build your list around Death Troopers, it can be a thing. If you want to chuck one in, it's fine, but they're just a little bit expensive.
Yeah.
They're not a bad unit at all. So I like the idea of tack striking them out of a Gav tank to get into range two, turn one.
Oh yeah. That could be pretty sick for sure. Uh,
But there's always things you can do. And surging red saves are nice. But yeah, they're pretty expensive.
There's not like there's not a metric ton of ranged Pierce out there in the game right now compared to places that the game has been in previously, so it doesn't feel like it's as much of a super risk to have Death Troopers.
Yeah, yeah, it's they're yeah, no, they're solid. They're very very vulnerable to glowy sticks.
Oh yeah, for sure. As they always have been.
And so the
Uh,
problem is you want to keep them at range 4 to stay away from the glow sticks, but then you can't score any objectives.
yeah. I mean, I think that is that's a very good point. Is that's a problem with like running uh, three or even four of them, is that you do need to have people in the points. And this is sort of a universal problem for Empire, right? Is that there's a lot of good guns out there, but you also need to be up contesting, which means that these range 3 and 4 units that are extremely weak to melee threats are a little bit of a
Which is why
liability.
because we kind of skipped them before, but that's what the fundamental reason why one of the best units in Empire is Black Suns.
Oh
Because they're
yeah,
the only unit designed to
yeah.
actually engage at range 2.
And I apologize. That was my fault as the host. Is I did want to comment, so we'll shoot back real quick. So, Black Suns, you mentioned them as being an intentional add to your Empire list,
Mm.
because and I think you just mentioned why is that it gives you an effective range band that Empire is otherwise like relatively lacking for, which is that range 2 sort of skirmishing range band. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
somebody that can sell, can go on to a point at range 2. They're hard to shift. Their
yeah,
firepower is devastating. Yeah, they're really strong. I mean, they're expensive again, but they're a really strong unit, and it's something that the list is missing. So again, like Rebels might have sleeper cell,
yeah,
some B2s, Gar have shotgun clones. So they've all got natively a unit that is really good at engaging at range 2. The one the Empire has is Black Suns.
yeah.
But
That
as an
makes
Empire
sense.
player, don't feel bad for putting mercenaries in there. Some Empire players think it's not very purist, or something like that. It's
I
it's
didn't know that was
absolutely
a
fine. It's
thing.
what the Empire would do. They get the mercenaries to do all the dirty jobs. It's
They
absolutely
they
fine.
hired guys like it's right there in Empire Strikes
Exactly.
Back. They hired a bunch of dirty bounty hunters to go catch Han Solo. So yeah, you shouldn't feel bad about it at all.
It's in the
Uh,
opening of Andor too, man. Like
yeah,
it's
that's right.
literally like they're just corpos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, how about uh for pikes? Like, do you think that there's a place for them in Empire at all?
No, they
Okay,
don't do anything the rest of the list doesn't do.
right.
So there's no reason to take pikes in Empire.
Yep.
But again, if
Uh,
somebody wants to, go nuts. But for me, there's no reason to.
right, right. Um, and then like shifting back to just like to finish up about Death Troopers real
Yeah.
quick. Mike, is like, have you seen a lot of Death Troopers in your area? Like, are you seeing? I mean, Krennic is common, so there's often a temptation to at least toss one in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is no, I haven't seen a lot of them. I think if you're gonna do it, I think you should actually be running them naked, with
Naked
just a
Death Troopers.
suppressive gun. Yep.
Hmm.
Um,
72.
72, they're kind of like a expensive ARF trooper at that point, which don't get me wrong, ARF troopers aren't great either, but a suppressive does make that pool a little bit more enticing in that they can kind of like take things off points by themselves in like ones or twos. Um,
Yeah, the
but
challenge is then you recover shooting every turn, so you stood still.
it definitely is not an
Yeah,
optimal thing,
Again, but then you can build around it by if you're planning to do that, then okay, maybe you have Veers in your list for his recover
sure.
card. So,
yeah.
you've got again, you've got the concept, you can work through it.
I've seen
Uh,
it done before in the kind of like the old edition. And I definitely think that I just like what's the point cost on it's like 72 plus like it's like
30 for the gun.
yeah, like 102 points for that unit is just like way too much.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
Yeah, there is a concept you can do like Krennic, Death Troopers, Naked Core, and then Black Suns.
and at
So you
the
can
end
use
of the
the Death
day,
Troopers at range and force people to come to you into the Black Sun firepower. But then you're running at 8 axe without a Jedi,
sure,
which
sure.
is
Oof.
But like also like the
Seems
the Death
rough.
Troopers at 72, like they do throw 8 white at range 2, right? Like they're
yeah,
kind of it's not like a super
No,
terrible.
they get better at
And
range 2. The problem is then if your enemy hits back with a Jedi or a something,
No
that's
doubt.
the problem.
That's why you got to keep
and
them cheap.
and at range 2, ideally, you will have had a chance to flip their gun over, so that you can add blast into it with probably like ×1, and then just have the rest of your dice in the pistol shot. But
Yeah.
yeah, 102 for the standard heavy, it does seem like a lot. Another thing that is also, like, now that I'm looking at it, surprisingly expensive is the generic Imperial Special Forces with the T-21. In my
Mhm.
head, it would not have been this much, but that is 95 points.
Yep.
Uh, and that
I
also feels
refer to
too
my
expensive,
previous
Dave.
statement. Everything's
Yeah.
too expensive.
Yeah.
So I actually think that if you're comparing this unit to like Commandos, Republic Commandos, I don't think that that's that far off the mark.
You think
It
Special Forces is as good as Republic Commandos?
I'm not saying that they're better. I'm saying that like if you're paying for a unit that infiltrates surges kind of in both directions and like I don't know like 90 points is not 90 to 95 I don't think is an unreasonable. I think if the rest of the army is like costed the way that it should be, I'm not sure that this unit is unreasonable.
I think that, like, the big difference I see, it's true they're both infiltrating units, and that they both can be a part of a pretty good damage pool you can lay down turn one, but that ISF is completely reliant on somebody else being able to give them aims, whereas Republic Commandos conveniently make their own aims as long as they have a face-up order. That allows them to, like, get the utility, and also from clone sharing as well, to allow them to get the utility out of what they're doing. And like I think that the trouble that I have when I look at ISF and why it does seem like they're quite a bit more expensive than they need to be is just that there is this cool thing that you can do, which is tax strike, but I don't see a place for them at all outside of that context, just because it is already hard to get aims to, like, your regular Joe Schmo trooper in Empire. And sort of like Shores, they're asking to be fed aims, and tax strike certainly gives it to them along with steady, which is a super important part of it. But once you get past that, I think anybody who's played with or against Iden can tell you about how the relative value of an ISF drops off severely after you get past that tax strike turn. Um, and like the critical two from the heavy helps, but it still just doesn't feel like enough. Like, I mean, Dave, do you
It's
think?
basically the firepower is very similar to a T-21 Storm Squad,
Yeah, yeah, it is.
which is 62 points.
Yeah, like marksman is cool and all, but on one of the TFT mini episodes that we recorded, we talk about how it's pretty seldom that you actually have an opportunity to take the aim action, where taking the aim action is the ideal thing to do with that unit. You're very often going to want to move shoot instead, if you're going to be shooting with the unit, and the ISF is just not very good at move shooting, for what you get for the money, and so that's why I feel like it's just in a rough place right now. But then shifting a little bit to talking about Inferno Squad in particular, there was certainly this moment in Legacy Legion when Inferno, I forget exactly when it happened, but there's some points change where it dropped like a significant amount. And all of a sudden, it was just showing up in like every Empire list under the sun. It's just like a toss in because it just made sense, given how cheap they were, even if you didn't have Iden in your list. That moment has certainly passed. I don't think that I've run into like I've run into more Gideons and Dells in other units than I've seen in Inferno Squad, like by a big margin so far since Legion 2.6 dropped. Like, what do you think is the thing that changed, Dave?
That's interesting. I don't know. I've always liked ISF, um, Inferno Squad. So yeah. I'm not sure that many people took them without Iden because they do get a lot of value from Iden because you just get an aim extra,
Right,
which
right,
is
right.
the unit's very aim hungry. I think you pay quite a lot for what they are.
Yeah,
So
I
if you've got
mean
so with
this.
Del Miko, you really want armor in your list to benefit from his repair because you're paying points for his repair. So
Yeah.
if you need a vehicle that it can actually do something with, um, but they're not a bad unit. They're okay, I think.
Yeah, I
What
mean
were we
this
gonna say,
unit
Mike?
was like 10 points cheaper before the update.
Oh, okay. Did that
It
so it
was
got more
sub
expensive.
it was sub 90.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which I think is the main reason you don't see it as
Oh
much.
yeah. They've gone up 10 points. They were 88.
Yeah.
They've gone up 10 points. That was because
Interesting.
Del Miko got hit by the sniper change that happened.
I think Dell used to be like 28, and I think either
Yeah,
the base squad or Gideon went up as well.
yeah. So they were definitely 88. Now they're 98. So yeah, that'll be a big part of it.
Because at
Yeah, going
88,
back
this
to the
unit is a deal, right? Like
yeah,
Yeah, I guess that they shifted up because the relative value of a sniper shot without sharpshooter went up severely with the 2.6 change. Before it would basically never do anything into heavy cover, and now obviously it can do stuff, and so that's probably why Dell got more expensive, and the whole thing got more expensive, and so it's no longer just like a sort of generic value talent unit. So, I mean, I guess Dave, would you say that if you're not running Iden, don't bother with Inferno Squad?
uh, generally, yeah, they get value from the aim.
Yeah.
Like most things, if there's a good reason for them, if you've got something, but generally, yeah, I'd be very cautious of putting them in.
Yeah. It's something that became significantly more popular, as far as I can tell, with Legion 2.6 into New Legion is the full Scout Trooper unit. Um, this unit has gone through a decent number of iterations. Like at some point, its Scout value went from 1 to 3, which it still has, and Scout is even more valuable now than it used to be. It can throw a lot of dice. It's not very easy to get mods on those dice, but it is certainly a thing that it can do. The sonic mine has turned into like an actual weapon that you can toss into that big dice pool, and that importantly also um, uh, has more dice than it used to throw, and adds blast to the entire pool as well as the suppressive that it already always had. So, I mean, I think that Scout Troopers have more of a place now than they had before. Um, and so, like Dave, what are the sort of lists that you think benefit most from tossing in like Sab Mine Scout Troopers in there?
Submines in particular, I'm not personally a big fan because I think getting them at range one's really hard.
You,
So I think naked scout troopers are a really good value for 48 points.
for 48, yeah, I agree.
They're really good value for 48 points, and that's why they're very very popular. If you throw a submine on there, there's 71, and they have to get into range one to really become effective. And if you're doing that because you're not surging, you probably want frag grenades, so then you're 76.
Yeah,
Then they're getting, they're a little bit expensive. Then if you can get the range one shot, it's pretty scary. But it's getting a 5 health white save unit at range one is challenging. So that's that is very useful if you've got a line of sight blocking terrain near a POI and you just
yeah.
hide them behind it. So anybody comes near your POI, you just blow them up. Um, Other than that, you really going to struggle to get those shots off in a way that you'd want.
It can certainly also happen on Breakthrough in particular. Like, a lot of lists that would be running the Sab Mine Scouts are going to run Breakthrough, and that's definitely something that I have been hit by before, and it really hurts to get hit by Breakthrough frag Sab Mine on turn one. And like, yeah, that unit's going to die right after that, but it can often do more than 76
Yeah.
points worth of damage from that
Yeah,
shot.
and again, that's I would say basic Legion play and knowing your opponent's threat ranges.
Right,
And
right, right.
if you deploy within range 3.5 of your opponent's deployment zone and they've got submine scouts, it's a lesson you need to learn. but
Yeah.
it's one you'll learn it, and then the next time you play, they won't be able to do that.
Yeah, that's fair. Uh, by comparison, though, the strike team, with the sniper rifle has seen a lot less played now than it had in the past. There is, I think that like I have seen places where it can work to a certain extent, especially if it's a list that has Iden in it, so that you can use tax strike to get a little bit more value out of it turn one. But I think that it's still not a reliable shot just in general.
Yeah, I
And
mean the challenge with it is if you say I want to do a list that has a lot of snipers in it,
yeah,
the 5 of first just do it so much better.
they do.
So
And even
if
even
you
BX
wanted
does it
if you
better.
wanted to play the let's snipe people at range game,
Yeah,
it's hard to look past arcs for that type of play style.
yeah,
Just on the scout sabs though, the only thing I would say is they do have more of a place than Tempest. They love hiding behind ATSDs and jumping out. So if you ATSDs are going more aggressive, with the SJCs can scout up, move forward, and all the scouts run behind them. And it means anybody that kind of tries to counter your ATSTs gets slapped hard.
yeah, yeah.
That's a potential play there.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense because that way they can be more protected. You're more likely to actually be able to get that range one shot that you want to get so much.
Yeah, I mean, if Empire ever get an aqua wall, then Scout Sabs become really good.
Please don't. Please don't AMG. We don't need more wall units out there that have four minis that you can cohere into whatever shape you want to protect your melee guys. That there's already enough of that in the game.
What Dark Troopers should have been, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, any thoughts on scouts before we move on?
Take them naked, be happy. I think
Yeah,
is the.
I think that's fair. They're
you know.
a good filler
That's
unit.
the problem with the special forces slot generally is you have a really hard justifying anything other than naked scouts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, yeah, you're talking about 100. Like if you want to just toss three of them in there to be activations that like can contest points because of their range. They're not like they're killable, but they're not mega killable because they do still have low profile that protects them to a large extent. Except unlike the veterans, they have low profile and a speed 2 move, which is important. Uh, and yeah, I mean, so you toss three of those in there, it's 144 points. That's really not bad.
Yeah, and you can just like throw them out behind a line of sight blocker vaguely near some POIs. And it just means your opponent can't like leave something really weak there to defend it.
Yeah,
They have
yeah,
to leave some serious units there to defend the POI because otherwise the scouts will get them. And you're kind of forcing your enemy to do things they really don't want to be doing. And you just leave them hidden. You don't need to bring them out.
yeah.
Just stop your enemy moving off the point.
And Scout 3 plus 2 speed 2 moves makes it relatively easy to get to that like awesome piece of
To get
terrain
to a
that you want
good
to hide
flanking
behind. Yeah,
position, so you're able to kind of threaten, and then you just only come out when you need to.
yeah, I like it a lot. Okay, support. Let's talk about the dewback first. You have a lot of experience with dewbacks. It seems like you have put them in like pretty much all of your lists in 2.6.
I struck gold first time, to be honest.
Okay.
Because when 2.6 dropped, I dropped and I thought, I haven't used my dewbacks for a while. I'll use my dewbacks. That was
Yeah.
the amount of thought that went into putting them into my list.
Right.
I then won the MKGT with which is the biggest event in the UK. It was the first big event under 2.6 that gained a little bit of attention on the internet. So people tried Vader dewbacks. It turns out they're really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly planned that way, but that's just kind of how it happened. But yeah, I said there 2.6 is much more a mobile game, and dewbacks are an amazingly mobile unit. Relentless on a bigger base, and they can move fast. And then plus new ways if you need to really kind of rocket them, range 3.5 across the table onto a point. They're a very, very strong unit, and they're not easy to kill. They're not particularly hard to kill, but they're not easy to kill.
Yeah, yeah.
So and chuck a gun on them and they're 75 points. You can tool them up, uplinks and tenacity and various other things. Obviously makes them better, but makes them much more expensive. So there's always a trade off there.
Yeah.
But triple highly motivated dewbacks is definitely a thing. It wrecks sleeper cell. It just trashes. It's really good to sleeper cell because you just outrange them.
Right. It can move
Um,
in from beyond range 3, which is the threat range of sleeper
yes,
cell.
yeah, and you base them. You kill half the squad. They hit you
Right.
back. You've got armor 1. They do like 2 wounds back to you, and it's just an attrition where you're always going to win.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very sick. Like you talked about tossing a gun on them. I think that sort of the first thing that people think of is the flamer, just because it can be added into the natural melee weapon that dewbacks have in order
Yeah,
to make them extra
I think
threatening.
it's the
But you
worst
often
choice.
use what's
I think
that?
it's the flame is the worst choice.
Oh, okay.
Um,
You think that's worse than even the
maybe one
T21?
flamer. The reason is because unless you're hitting a squad of 6 men, your
Yeah.
basic attack is better. So when you do the average of 3 red, 3 white versus a black and a white per mini, you've got to have like 5 or 6 men that you're hitting for your
Yeah.
flamer to actually be a better attack. And you've got no gun whatsoever. And relentless is a really good keyword. So the ability to kind of just sit back and plink away, you can always like move up, shoot, move back again as well to really keep out of threat range if you need to. Um,
So
and it's
you,
5 points off the flamer. So I would much rather have, for example, one of the guns and tenacity for 1 point more than the flamethrower.
Okay. So yeah, I guess a big part of the value that I saw would be that you can be moving in from even farther away and still contribute like a more significant pool than either of the two regular guns would do. So like
But if you're
if
not
you're ending your
facing
movement at
something,
range
you'll just
one,
if you've run up to range 1 and you're
yeah,
not in melee, you're it's a
your
dead
ass going to
human.
be killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the
Um,
only way I've done it before when I did run 3 flamers was you run up, you flame a unit with still a move left. So you flame one unit, then you base another one.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Um, and so between the other two guns, like there's the RT and then there's the T21. The
Yeah.
T21 seems like it's better at range 3, but I think people often take the RT for the range 4 option.
Yeah, I like a plink with a G-back.
Yeah.
I found it multiple times on a lot of missions. It means they're quite good. They can also hold the wide objectives quite well, and you can just kind of stay on the point, move up, shoot, move back, and influence a point that's like range 5 or 6 away. So you can kind of you actively doing something throughout the game, even if you're holding a back point. You're also doing something turn 1. So usually you do back turn 1, you move on shoot. Maybe turn 2 as well. Turn 3 and 4 you're in melee. Turn 4, 5 you kind of sat on a point somewhere in the corner and plinking away. So I find that overall the range 4 gun's probably the best one.
Yeah.
But if somebody takes the T21, fantastic. I love that gun, so great. It's not a bad
Sure.
choice. The flamethrowers are good. Don't get me wrong, flamethrowers are good. I just think it doesn't give you another option other than just running straight into people,
Yeah, that's
which,
fair.
despite contrary opinion, I prefer more tactical nuance than that.
Yeah, you're an extremely nuanced guy, Dave. I can attest to that.
Exactly.
Uh, Mike, what's your preferred way to build a dewback?
Yeah, I think the RT97C is the way to go. I am in agreement. The flame rifle just is like too much of a duplication of what the unit already does. And honestly, I think the RT is just strictly better than the T21. The critical matters very little on the gun. So
I
Against
think as a
vehicles it
clone
does, but
player,
that's
but as an Empire player, the critical's huge. Critical's huge into so many scenarios. Um, yeah. So
because
against
there's like
armor,
vehicles
against
and dodge
rebels,
spam. It's extra good.
yeah, and it gets around backup.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that too.
yeah. The Guardian barrier.
That's
It's
fair.
critical. The critical guns is if you're shooting at range 3, it's better. Um, the other thing, the dewbacks, one of the other dewbacks jobs actually is standby plinking, and the RTC is better for that because your red dice is very consistent.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
I got to remove a standby. I've got a range 4 dewback. There it goes. It's gone.
Speaking of standbys, a unit that is good when it can get a standby token is the E-Web because it does have Sentinel.
Yeah,
Got a very big change in terms of its range going from 3 to 4 when 2.6 dropped, and I think
yeah,
that there
that's
were
huge. That's
yeah,
huge.
yeah. I think that there were a lot of folks who, hadn't been messing around with the EOFs at all in Legacy of Legion, and then all of a sudden it became a lot more attractive. That said, I feel like maybe this is because dewbacks exist, but um, outside of Blizzard Force, where I certainly have seen it more, I haven't seen a ton of E-webs. Like, why do you
No,
think that
I
is,
think you hit it on the
Dave?
head. Dewbacks exist.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the E-Web's a very good unit. It's not particularly expensive. It's very solid for what it does, but it does more of what Empire can do with all the other units.
Shooting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which is fine. It's quite good at it, and it's perfect. It's reasonably well costed for what it does. It's just you're not adding anything to the list with it, whereas the dewbacks are giving you something different, which is what you need.
Right. And I think that if there was a world where Riot Squad was more appropriately costed to where those would be your charging in units, I think that
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that could be the core of your list, then there would be more of a place for E-webs to be
yeah,
your
yeah.
shooting
Three webs
units.
sat on the back line, just
Yeah,
blasting over the top.
exactly.
Yeah, that could work really well.
Yeah. And then I kind of feel the same way about range troopers. This is a
I
unit that
thought Range Troopers were in a really good place, then they went up 10 points for no reason whatsoever.
yeah, that, like I we still haven't really gotten an explanation for what happened there.
I
I
can't help
I
but think it was a misprint and they just went with it.
that's certainly possible, and if that was the case, then it's not something that AMG would tell us straight up. Uh, but yeah, range troopers were already in a place where they were like a little bit of a nuanced pick. You certainly needed to have a reason to take them, but unlike the E-Web, they are able to do move shoots, and that they can spread themselves to move at a normal speed. Um, they have the armor, which makes them very resilient, and they're like getting free aims is always good. So I think that they had a place, and then yeah, the 10 point hike just like sort of took it away as a decent choice.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I've taken Range Troopers a few times, and overall, I think dewbacks are better just because of the mobility.
Yeah.
But Range Troopers were definitely not a bad choice. But with 10 points extra, it's like that's too much now.
Yeah, Mike. E-webs in non-Blizzard or range troopers like at all are those things that you're seeing around where you are?
I see people trying it, but I don't know. I actually think EOBs are pretty good. Um, just for their like if you're doing like a MSU sort of thing. But
Yeah,
um
I think it's definitely list really good list you could have with E-webs in, but
Yeah,
you need something else that's doing the mobile counterpunch thing.
yeah, that's taking points and holding them.
Yeah, whether that's your characters or Black Suns or whatever else it is, it's yeah.
And if you're playing bunker assault, then sweet. Like the E-web is doing the thing that you need it to do, but sadly for Empire players, not every game is going to be bunker assault. So
No, but
if you're
they're in prepared positions as well, which is a blessing and a curse as much as it
right,
is. So yeah, they're in the right spot at the start of the game,
yeah.
but they're just going to stay in that spot. So the game is much more mobile than that. So if the rest of the list is being mobile, then having them as your anchor is not terrible. Um,
That said, the eWeb is like one of the units that seems to sort of utilize prepared positions the best because, one of the big problems with prepared positions is that you are somewhat likely to take fire early. But compared to a shore or a veteran, if you take like 2 wounds from an enemy unit shooting your eWeb, it doesn't actually change anything about your offensive output. And then you also have a dodge and red saves on top of that. So it feels more like it can kind of weather it compared to other units that are suddenly like getting their offense neutered as they take those early hits.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think somebody can and will make them work. I think they're solid, but not.
Yeah. One of the now that I'm past both Worlds and WTC, one of the things that I'm gonna start trying to play locally is just like a full E-Web Blizzard Force, and I guess that snowtroopers are gonna be my point holder units with flamethrowers, but we'll have to see, along with Darth Vader, of course, but we'll have to see how that works out. Last support choice is the speeder bike. The speeder bike is 80 points. Um, I feel like that's generally sort of the problem with them right now. But I mean, do you think that as things are right now, that there is much of a place for speeder bikes in Empire, Dave?
Um, Generally limited. They're pretty expensive and they
Boy,
die
they
very
die easily.
easily. Yeah, die very easily these days.
Cover one, it's not what it used to be.
No, and you can't get heavy cover because it used to be really easy to get them heavy cover before.
Yeah, you put one behind a building on your way in, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden you're
yeah, yeah.
canceling 2 hits per shot. It
So
was a
the
huge
dying
difference.
easier. Yeah, they're in a hard place. I think. Yeah,
You also
but speed
often want
bikes are
order
fun.
control, which is
Speed
a
bikes are
problem.
fun, but they're
Yeah,
not.
they're
Yeah,
fun.
I think I still think they've got a place in Tempest. Um, but yeah,
But even with Blizzard Force, do you think E-Webs are generally a better choice?
the way Blizzard Force plays now, then yes, and with the range 4, I think 4 E-Webs is quite scary.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny how things change, right? Because,
which is
Blizzard
good.
Force used to
It's
be
good.
like
It's
the
all
most,
these
yeah,
different
it's good.
factors.
It is
And
good.
I said, and this is the fundamental issue we've got is where we get not quite a year, but soon will be a year into 2.6,
Right.
and everything's pointed on an old version of the game, and so a lot of things are not quite pointed right. And speed bikes need to be cheaper, and other things need to be more expensive to factor in the fact that the way the game just plays differently to how it used to.
I'd
And I
also like,
understand BMG's position of just waiting to see how it does play,
yeah,
rather than going too early with it. But it's in the meantime, it's a little frustrating that across the board, Empire feels a little bit expensive. I said some things are about feel E-Webs are probably about right, Dubec's probably about right.
yeah, yeah.
Naked Scout Troopers probably about right, but a lot of the other things just feel too expensive.
Yep. Mike, do you think that there's stuff to squeeze out of speeder bikes right now, or do you think players should wait for them either to get a points drop or to get like low profile instead of cover one, which would be a big improvement?
You should just take a two back, honestly. If you
Yeah.
want a
It's mobile
mobile
and it doesn't
platform
die,
that's like a gun
so that's pretty
platform,
good.
like you just take a two back.
Yeah.
Speeder bikes are cool. They definitely can do some wonky stuff. They're not swoops. Um,
So I hate swoops. Swoops. No, nobody should ever take swoops in any list. They're terrible. Don't take them.
well,
Yeah.
um,
Awful.
yeah. Damage output, they're not swoops, right? And the Empire speeder
Survivability, they're
bikes
also
just
not swoops.
they're also yes,
Yeah.
but I mean they're not that much different than swoops survivability wise. Like yes, you get a
Yeah.
free dodge token some turns, like that's great. But yeah, for 80
If anybody
points, you
does
can do a
want to
lot
use
better.
speeder bikes, you have to hide them. Just as people sort of alpha strike them, you've lost your units.
They're not for that anymore.
No,
The issue is that
That's
they
in some
don't
ways they
Legacy
never
even
Blizzard
were.
Force is gone.
they don't even deliver like a good alpha in the new edition. Like in
No.
the old edition, getting like 5 hits was like respectable. It was like that's like good job. You did a thing. In this it's like, oh, you rolled 5, like that's pretty normal, like okay.
Yeah, but so usually the bikes you don't want to be engaging until about turn 3. So basically, wait till the fight to happen. So
Yeah.
everyone's got other targets that are priority, and then the bikes come in and start doing things. That's the way to play. If you are going to use them, that's the way to play them. But that means those first engagements you're 240 points behind if you've taken 3 of them.
Oof. Yeah, when you say
Yes.
it that way,
Most
it
games
sounds pretty
are
bad.
most games are well on their way to being over by that point in the
Exactly. So then you've got to be really clearing up. You kind of hide them and then threaten a back point or make them stay on the back point. So
Yeah.
to stop them just swooping over and killing it. So there is play there, but it's they've always been tricky to use well, and now it's just even harder to use them well, and they're probably overcosted. So if people want to use speeder bikes, then go for it. I think it can be done, but it's you've got to hide them and strike at the right time.
Yep.
And you've got to
Makes
know how to
sense.
hide bikes with the speed 3 compulsory. That's
Yep.
learn how to do donuts in the car park.
That's right. When it comes to heavies, there's a few options. We've already talked about Dark Troopers a little bit. I think that early on in 2.6, we maybe undersold them a little bit in terms of their potential utility, just because like the drop to armor 3, it seemed like it was a lot. And so they certainly can be killed now. And then I think that they did take another hit when aggressive tactics went away, because that
Yeah,
was something that was making them like very survivable at the time. Uh, where do you generally see Dark Troopers right now, Dave?
I think the way they abuse the pass mechanic is disgusting.
Oh yeah, so that is the big thing, right?
that is really really strong. The unit themselves are okay.
Yeah.
They're not great. They're okay. The way they abuse the pass mechanic is really really good.
Yeah, it is kind of gross that a 10 act
I mean,
list
if anybody
acts like
doesn't know
12
how that
acts.
works, it's because you count now units rather than activation tokens
Yeah.
for calculating passes. So you can have like eight units but 11 activations if you've got triple darks. So you get your passes based on the 8 activations. So if you can have 11 activations, they have 11 activations, but you've still got 2 passes.
Yeah. It's gross, and it feels really bad, like when you have a 12 act list against a 10 act Empire list, and then they're like still finishing after you finish, and it's just gross. Um, and in terms of the other options, I think we'll just like talk about the most commonly taken one last. Dave, there's two heavies that are sort of more on the utility end. So that would be the Lat and the Gav. They're obviously both transports. They both have guns, but they're not amazing guns. Where do you see those units in particular fitting into the list these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Gav gun is undersold because if you give it the range 4 gun and surge to hit, at range 4 it hits. Oh, it's only one white dice. Oh no, one black. Which is it? Which one black dice worse than an ATST?
Yeah,
So it's not miles. Or it's not obviously that's half a hit every shot roughly. So it's not quite as good, but it's not far off.
it's two less impact also. Or
Yes,
one less impact at range 4, I should say.
yeah, which
Yeah,
which depends. Doesn't
yeah,
always
that's
make a
not a huge
difference.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But it's not. Well, so the Gavs one that dice was at range 4 versus the ATS is at range 3.
oh,
So at
okay,
range
okay.
4 it's stronger. At
Yeah, that
range
makes
2
sense.
it's slightly worse. The problem is that with the weak sides you need to keep it at range 4,
Yeah,
and that's kind of part of the issue with it. Is it gets burnt pretty quickly if you move it into the middle.
it
Um,
gets really rough when the naked rebel troopers are just like plinking hits off your tank over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah, and obviously the new transport rules. Not a fan. I love the old transport rules, but they are what they are. You can still find some use for transport, but it's it makes the threat range of Black Suns. If you've got Black Suns, you chuck them in the back of the Gav tank, for example. It makes the threat range really far. If you want to alpha some Black Suns at somebody, it's usually a bad idea, but the threat of it's always fun. So
Yeah,
usually with
that's
that one, it's the threat of it is good. The application of it is usually not a good idea.
yeah. Um, and then how about the lat? Mike had told us a couple episodes ago how we're finding some fun uses with the lat in terms of being able to drop off a Ahsoka core unit that has
Yep.
a very long charge range. Empire options as far as that goes are much
Yeah, I mean,
lesser.
obviously with Republic, you can do it with the lot. If you combine it with Cody and the Ahsoka squad,
Yeah,
you're charging people into their deployment zone turn 1 or something. It's just
yeah, that's
simple.
pretty sick.
And
Certainly
that's the
fun.
thing is, it's with the
Yeah,
transport. It's always like, who am I transporting? That's the question.
exactly.
And there aren't. I said, unfortunately, other than Black Suns, there's nobody really worth transporting. And the problem with the Black Suns is you don't want to give them. You get one of the benefits is you get the free order. You don't want to be giving them an order because then they'll lose independent. So
It's tough.
yeah, there's no really strong candidates to be transported in the line. I said one of the things I had thought about was potentially tax striking some death troopers out the back of Lats. So if you have Krennic, Iden, a couple of lats, and the problem is you someone out of points really quickly and works it all out. But you have something where you're getting the Death Troopers up front on the turn one tack strike, so you get into range 2 with multiple aims, and that's potentially scary. Don't know if it's good, but there's something
Yeah.
potential there that you could do. But yeah, it's fine. It's not great. You're just paying for the transport capability. Unless there's something really good you can do with that, you're probably not worth it.
That's the thing, is that you can run a lad at 118 and put armor piercing and HE shells on it, and that way like each one will be recovering every other turn, and so you can just like continue to move shoot with two guns every turn. But it's still like not it's not like quite good enough without search to hit. It's not quite a good enough attack pool to really like want to use it as a gunship per se. At
Yeah, I
least
mean,
that's the way it feels to me.
yeah, but it's reasonably fast. It's reasonably hard to kill. Armor 5
Yeah.
still not terrible.
Yeah.
Um, the immune blast and range 1, so it's immune to impact grades, that kind of thing with the armor 5. That's okay. That's not bad. So it's not terrible. It's just not great. I think there's definitely some uses there. You can run them onto points around the side, and there's things they can do.
Yeah.
But
Mike, do you see any real like any utility that you think is untapped when it comes to either the Gav or the Latin Empire?
They don't have great units to transport. So
Yeah,
I think
that
the
is the
answer is
problem.
no, like
yeah,
um
that's the main issue for me.
Is the Gav LOS blocking in order to like hide the unit that you're transporting, like do the move drop off and then move ahead of
Yeah,
them?
yeah. Borderline,
Hmm.
but it's very, very borderline. If somebody is stood on like a piece of terrain that's like
Like a
1 mil
crate.
thick,
Yeah.
yeah.
They'll
And
just
the
hide
problem is
up
because
to
they've
be able to
changed the
see out of
OS
it.
rules, so you used to be able to put the Gav onto a piece of terrain to ramp it up to block the line of sight, but now
Right.
you can just shoot under it because they
Yeah.
clarified that if you're ramped up, you just shoot under it. So
Woof.
yeah,
Not amazing. And then last on heavies is the ATST. This is the one that you
yeah.
generally see the most commonly. It's good. It's got a big dice pool. It's got 11 health behind armor 5, which makes it pretty hard to kill. Its weak point is relatively rarely exploitable except by Jedi that are rushing into its back, which can kill it very quickly, which is
Yeah,
always
it
fun to
turns out
do.
Impact 4 PS3 is really good.
Yeah, it's just like yeah, it's not bad. And so it's just like a good unit to toss in there. But even that being said, I still feel like I usually when I see ATSTs at all, it's usually in the context of either Blizzard Force or Tempest Force. Like, why do you think that is, Dave?
No, I think it's because both of those have ways of making its strengths better, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Um, yeah, I mean, the Tempest Force command cards are really good for ATSTs, and the Free Scout 2 and the command cards make
right.
dial the
It's huge.
ATSTs in Tempest to 11. Blizzard Force doesn't have a lot of choices.
Right.
So it's got
Got to
there's
fill the
some
points
good things
somehow.
about Blizzard Force, but there's a limit to what you can do in Blizzard Force. It's very limited options. And it is not a bad choice. It's just there aren't any other options there. Yeah, I think with an all Empire list, ATSCs are fine. Again, it depends on what you want to be doing with this. But if if you want to be spending 160, 70 points on a unit, it's just kind of going to sit at the back and plink away at things. They might, would you rather have 3 whips? Would be, for
Yeah,
not much
I
more.
probably would. Yeah. I
So
mean, yeah. When you
it's
put it
that
that
kind
way,
of consideration,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, or yeah. So there's a bit of a comparison there. Yeah, and the other challenge, of course, the one activation. It's a lot of points. One activation, which on the secure missions is important. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think they're okay, but as I said, the problem is some things like Vader is very, very popular. Dewbacks are very, very popular. Some of the operatives, which we've not discussed yet, are very popular. So once you've kind of put all them in your list, there's not that many points for an ATST.
For a really expensive heavy unit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And so I think with that, like, let's go ahead and transition to our last one, which is the operative slot. There are so many options that, we're gonna have. I think we have to sort of like group them together when we talk about them. I think maybe just to make sure I don't accidentally skip past it like I did before, let's talk about the mercenary options first. So there are right now five of them, and then when Hondo comes out, there will be no, there's six of them, and then Hondo will make a seventh. It's a very mercenary heavy slot, as it turns
Yeah.
out.
And there's
Um,
still quite a few missing. We're still waiting for all the other mercenaries that exist.
like Dengar and
Yeah,
Zuckus and,
exactly.
and
It's
stuff like
Zuckus
that.
and all those guys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, who knows? Like we still don't know sort of what's going to be the re-release context for Cad Bane and Bosk and Boba Fett. So I still have my fingers crossed that they're going to be tossed in with a couple new ones
Yeah.
that were in on the bridge in the Death Star. But yeah, like with all these options that you have, obviously, like you can only run one, maximum two of them if you're gonna like put enough stock into running allies of convenience. But is there one that really stands out to you as sort of
Din
the
Djarin.
go-to? Din. Okay, makes sense.
Din Djarin, backpack, spear, flamer. Um, Especially if you're running him with Vader, you probably want C's so you can benefit from new ways.
Yeah,
It costs a wound on Din, which is really upsetting. One thing we didn't cover on core was medics. As you know, I'm a big proponent of medics. And if you're doing that kind of play, having one or two medics to get Din back to health is good. But, yeah, Din's really good. Um, just in 2.6 generally, it suits
he's
him
just really
really.
great, and he
He's
he
just really
got made cheaper when 2.6 dropped.
Yeah,
Uh,
he did. I mean, in Old Legion, it was a bit rubbish, but he
yeah,
just fits perfectly into 2.6. His
yeah,
tool set works really, really well. But compared to like Boba Fett, who was the main guy,
yeah.
but Sharpshooter 2 lost so much value that
Right.
he now feels very expensive.
It Sharpshooter really did lose a lot of value, so much that like when they redid Lando, they just like didn't bother with it. And they're just like, we're just gonna put points into somewhere that's more interesting because it just like doesn't matter as a keyword right now.
They could have put it
Uh,
on him and he would
yeah,
be the same,
it
right?
wouldn't have changed its value exactly. But I mean, Mike, there's a billion mercenary choices. Din is certainly going to be a good one. Like, what do you think are the other like solid mercenary options for Empire operatives?
I mean, I think you can take Boba. I think you can take IG-88. Bosk is like okay, but I feel like there are just so many units in Empire that like do range 4 stuff that Bosk is not really like a necessity. CAD and IG-11 I think are just not good. Um,
Yeah, those both feel rough. Do you feel the same way about CAD and IG-11, Dave?
Yeah, I think if I 11 didn't have to take his 3-pip, it'd be more interesting.
I think
Okay,
that's
for
But
fair.
CAD Bane, you mean? Yeah, yeah.
no, well, both of them. Because IG-11
For
has
Oh,
to
both
take
of
his
them. That's
has to
right.
take
yeah.
his explosion
Yeah,
3-pip.
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
which is rough because 3-pips tend to be pretty good in Empire.
Right.
And Cad Bane, similarly, you need his 3-pip to be able to work, and it's reasonably competitive and it's not doing much. He's yeah, I mean, Cad Bane really generally worked in Separatists because you could do the
Yeah,
reverse
reverse
slot
order
your bag,
control. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
reverse auto control. Um, you can't do that in Empire. You don't get that many orders out. Um, and he needs his independent dodges to not just die. So yeah,
Doesn't have comms really anymore either, so it's gets
I
makes
think
it even
Cad's a
harder.
I think Cad's a really really fun piece.
He's very fun.
Um, and I
He's
think
just
people can use him.
overpriced now.
It depends what else is in your list because you want to be taking his at least his 3-pip and maybe his other command cards, which
Yeah,
means you're having a non-commander heavy list, which it's interesting how that fits together.
yeah.
But I take Vader a lot, and I'm taking Vader's 3-pips. So yeah, Cad doesn't get a look in.
Right. Makes sense. And
It should
then
it
go
should
ahead, Mike.
also be noted that like IG-11's 3-pip got so much worse.
With the self-destruct change.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just it's atrocious.
Uh,
Like
yeah.
if you're gonna give up
Accurate.
your own unit and like I don't know and burn a command card, Like it better do something amazing. And this is like
Yeah. What is it? Is self-destruct 4? Is that what it is?
it is, but which is just like a bunch of suppression tokens. At least before you're like, yeah, I just dropped like the biggest nuclear bomb on this
Yeah.
POI
Yeah.
ever,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And like that at least like made it feel like you got something out of it.
Right. Yeah.
I
These
don't know.
days, not so much.
Yeah.
Empire does have a new operative to play around with as of the April change. It's got Callus. Mike and I have already talked a lot on this podcast about how we feel like the new Callus is just like plain old value town for what you get for 70 points. It's just a lot. Even if you're not gonna like mess around with his command cards all that much, he is giving you a lot of keywords and pretty good offensive output, pretty good reliability, survivability on a 70-point unit. Somebody who can give you a melee
Yeah.
threat range option. I mean, do you think that he's being like overvalued at all, Dave, or do you also agree that he's
Um,
value town?
yeah, no, I think he's fine. His I think he's appropriately costed. He's adding an extra bounty is really nice. If you have another bounty hunter, just being
Yeah.
able to bounty 2 targets is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he is just ridiculously aim hungry.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
and he doesn't have tactical or anything like that. So I think he's fine. But when I was building my list before, for example, I had a choice between a Dewback and Callus, and I'd just much rather have a Dewback. So I think Callus is good, but yeah,
I could,
I think it's perfectly good to put in there. If you're taking another bounty hunter, he gets much better because I
yeah,
think having Din with 2 potential bounty targets is pretty strong. If you can get use out the direct trooper keyword, if you've got a random stormtrooper, it makes no difference. But if you've got units that you want to be able to direct onto, that can be helpful as well.
in a future rule world where like riot control squads, and then you could maybe toss a Gideon Hask into a riot control squad. Then all of a
Yeah, well, I
sudden
mean,
that
get in on a snow unit and then a shore unit and then a mortar, so you've got full order control on your core.
yeah, that's
Is
not bad.
it's a thing you can do. I don't know if it's good or not. It's a thing you can do if you're struggling with order control in your list.
Yeah. The other options, there's 3 other options for Empire. 2 of them are kind of grouped together. We have the Inquisitors, Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister. It still continues to be funny to me how much concern there was over these 2 releases when they were first announced, because we were all very upset that these guys could just shut down my force push, and we thought they were going to be all over the place, and then they just like kind of came out with a little bit of a whimper, and then in 2.6 and beyond have still continued to be sort of like niche choices. It's one where people expend a lot of effort to make them work. But what do you think about them in general, Dave?
They're fine. They're
Right.
overcosted.
They're just too expensive, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
they're overcosted. Their damage output's really limp.
yeah, yeah,
Fifth,
Pierce
your
one,
fifth brother, you need your opponent to put 2 ones on fifth brother for him to be any good.
right? You can just ignore him, and he isn't going to punish you all that much for it.
Yeah. So because he needs the charge ability, because otherwise you just see him come in and he's like, okay, fine. I think
Right.
they're okay. Um, Again, 10 points cheaper each, and I think it's more interesting.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to knock way more than 10 points off these guys for maybe
Yeah,
to
it might be
consider
Well,
more.
taking them.
because the other thing, of course, is they want to be playing their command card, so it depends again what else is in your list.
Yeah.
Because they kind of feel like they'd be best in like a hero-heavy Empire list, but then they're not getting their command cards, and then without their command cards, they're even more not great.
Yeah, I mean, and thinking about that, I'm not even like enough of an expert to say like what the most valuable command cards between the 2 of them
It's the
are.
2 people that share tokens. There's quite a lot you value you can potentially get from that,
Sure.
but
And
it's
two pips are sort of generally the weakest corner of Vader himself, so you could
the
kind
point
of
is when
see
you
it.
play it, because you need to play it. It doesn't really do that much. It's one that
Mm,
it's an effect that lasts the whole game, and it's like, well, if you take an Iden, you're attack striking. If you're taking Vader, you're you're darkness descending. So
yeah.
it's that early card you're playing to start getting your army where it needs to be. And so off, depending what your plan is, there often isn't room for that. So, and I said when they get there, they're fine.
Yeah.
You know, it'll take them about 3 rounds to kill a naked arc squad, but they'll get beaten up in the process.
Boy,
If
That's
they're
the other problem, of
lucky.
course, is naked arcs exist, and naked arcs will just kick the shit out of them. Pardon my French. So it's just like, yeah, okay.
Mike,
Yeah.
how cheap would Fifth Brother need to be for you to consider tossing him into an Empire list?
I think both of these units, even if you considered me taking like all their command cards, like if they're not coming in at like 80, I don't even think that's funny. I think it's
No,
like
no, I mean
like
it's
like
that, that could be
that's a
for real.
cost where like I'm like starting to consider it, you know, like I don't know. Callus is definitely better than both these pieces. And Callus has way more non-combat utility. Um like
Yeah.
realistically, these guys' command cards, for the most part, like don't really do much on the interesting side of things. There's like here's a token here or there, but like overall, the value of those tokens has gone down significantly. Um, yeah,
Yeah, the problem is then they're token hungry because like they've got block, so they
Like
have
a
to have
block.
dodges.
Yeah, that
So
sucks.
you need the dodges, and their attacks really limp unless you get aims. And
Yeah.
so, but that's kind of the problem is they
so
need these tokens to
I
work,
I'm not
and you have
saying
to
that they
sacrifice a
don't
lot to
need
get
them.
the tokens, and they're
Yeah,
expensive. So
that's why I think that these things should be priced like a little mini Callus type deal. If Callus was didn't have any support abilities, like what should his points cost be? Whatever the answer to that question is where these guys should be.
That's fair.
all I would
Yeah.
say is if you do want to use these, burst of speed with new ways to motivate them is a long reach.
Yeah.
If somebody's got like a core unit on a back point,
If you
there's a,
want to do one wound to whatever you hit, yeah.
well, yeah, maybe
Yeah, that's the big difference.
maybe three.
Yeah, that's the difference between this and like charging in with that Ahsoka squad is like the number of wounds you're gonna expect from like diving your opponent like your unit all the way
Well,
into your
with the
opponent's
Ahsoka
lines.
squad, like with a supersize Ahsoka squad, once you've killed 9 models, it hits as hard as Obi-Wan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that
It's
certainly
like,
helps too. Whereas when Fifth Brother takes 5 wounds, he's dead. So it's not the best comparison. So let's end where we started. Darth Vader. You mentioned how the like over there in England, you've always thought the Commander Vader was better. Over here at the Fifth Trooper, we had disagreements about that in the past. I think that these days there's not much disagree on in terms of which one has the higher value, but I guess I
yeah,
would ask you,
although
Dave.
Team US brought a couple of operative Vaders in their Empire lists. They're still
Yeah,
holding. WC, they're still holding on.
the culture is still holding strong over here.
It is. It is. I think operative Vader is a good unit, a very very good unit. I
He is
just
still
think
Vader
Commander
at
Vader.
the end of the day.
I just think Commander Vader is so much better. Yeah, it's still
Yeah,
Vader.
he still has the amazing
I just
command
think,
cards, and yeah,
yeah, it's infinite courage and compel trooper is just so strong. Um, you know,
yeah,
um, his and Vader's speed is very rarely a problem. It is for me anyway. Um, so
well, with the new infiltrate, yeah,
yeah, with the new infiltrate, and I know people say, oh, after he's bursted, he can't move anymore. It's never an issue. You know that's what's going to happen, and you play around it. I said normally with Commander Vader, you burst onto a point, and then you drop something like Master of Evil. So it's you've won the point. You burst onto it with Implacable or something. You've won the point. Next turn, you Master of Evil, so you've got the point the next turn, and then you've won. That's kind of generally how that plays
yeah.
out.
You don't need Vader to like suddenly go onto some other point on the other side of the board because you send him at the side of the board that matters the most, and then you dominate it, and then the fact that you're slow
Yeah,
doesn't matter
that's generally
anymore.
what Vader's doing.
Yeah,
I just also yeah. So, but I think Operative Vader is a very very good and is good value, especially if you don't take push on him. I think push is brilliant, but if you can like think about Vader as being if you get like 170 180 point Vader, that's incredible value. on Operative Vader. So I think it's very good. I've never said it's not good. I would always take Commander Vader personally, and I think everybody else should. But he's still very strong.
If there was a world where there were more commanders, like people in the commander slot that were so enticing that it would make you want to think about taking Vader in
I
the off
think that
slot.
might be. Yeah, I mean, I'm committed hard onto Commander Vader now, so I'd never admit anything else, to be honest, personally.
Fair.
But when when Tarkin etc. come out, I think people might be going, and even myself, I'm going to be tempted with Operative Vader, given because some of the really strong relatively cheap commanders coming out who are doing command things, and you want a beat stick, then yeah, Din Vader's a hell of a combo for a couple of beat sticks to running around the table.
Yeah, like even if like one of those new commanders is like really good with their support abilities, like the idea of having Vader and Din as your charging units is like potentially really scary.
Yeah, because the advantage then is Vader can just run off and go wherever he wants. You don't have to worry about keeping him around the army. Which Commander Vader you do, you have to play around it in terms of making sure that when he runs off, if it goes off too far, the rest of your army just starts running away.
And how about you, Mike? Do you agree that Op Vader's place is probably going to be in a future when there's a little bit more spice in the commander slot for Empire?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also think that these units just like they're sort of samey now. They've gone through like a variety of changes. I sort of wish that you could take Inquisitorious training on Operative Vader, because I think that would actually
That
like
would make it really interesting.
that would like make it a choice, like an interesting choice, um, and also be like very on theme. But obviously, that's not a thing.
Of course, then you'd have to drop either Fray or Tenacity,
Sure,
which
but
also seems
like, but
tough.
I think people might be willing to do that, you
Yeah.
know. I don't know. Yeah, I think the main issue here is that there's just like there's no good Imperial commanders other than Vader. So you're like, okay.
Yeah, you take Vader or a support commander, pretty
But
much.
you take Vader right now, or you're taking like a field commander,
Or yeah,
right?
or you're taking a support commander because you like want to run a higher activation list, or that you want to pour points into like your special forces slot or your support slot or heavies or something. But you wouldn't take a support commander just that you can afford Operative Vader, because you should just take Commander Vader instead.
Right.
Yeah, if it's a choice between Operative Vader plus, I don't know, Veers,
Veers,
Commander
yeah,
Vader.
yeah,
Originally,
exactly.
the point of Op Vader was like he has more wounds than Commander Vader, right? Like that was like whole shtick, and you got the innate, force throw. But Commander Vader is always going to have saber throw and has more wounds now, so it's really just a difference in speed and all
Yeah,
of
and
yeah.
because of the nature of primary objectives, it just doesn't matter as much as it used to.
Yeah, I will say like you can still do some gnarly stuff with force throw. Like that exists.
Yeah, being able to
Scatter's
scatter
a
can
really
do
good
mean
keyword,
things.
you
Yeah.
know. Um,
But I did try Operative Vader once, and somebody suppressed them on my implacable turn, and I was so sad.
yeah,
So
that
I
is the main
refused to pick them up
drawback.
ever since. In fact, it was Ollie. Ollie suppressed him on his implacable turn, and I'm like, nope, he's going in the bin.
It kind of feels like you should have courage for. Like, let's be honest.
Well, I definitely think that if you're taking Operative Vader, you got to bring Krennic.
Yeah, but
Like
yeah,
just in case.
Yeah, 100%.
The idea of Krennic compelling Vader though is just like one that's so silly
yeah,
that I don't
no, I
even want to
can't do it.
entertain it.
Nope, nope.
I mean, like whether you want to or not, I do think that like if you're gonna play Operative Vader,
Yeah.
I don't know, you gotta consider that, or maybe factor in like strict orders or something.
I'll just take Commander Vader.
That's also fine. Um, Definitely, I do think this is probably the piece that is the largest casualty from the Palpatine being taken out of the faction. I
Mm.
do think that like Operative Vader's place was sort of in that list where you could go like master and apprentice sort of style.
Hard disagree.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dave.
But that's all old school.
Yeah, and of course it was also better when you could pull the strings to both move Vader and have him do an attack with that move.
No
Yeah,
doubt.
I
That
do
was
understand why they've taken it out of the game, but it was really fun.
It was
And
super fun.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, we've already covered that one to a great extent in other episodes, and yeah, that actually that ties things up for the Empire. And so we have now gone through all of the factions and also Shadow Collective with the players who have done very well with them. So I hope that this gives players a little bit of uh, a little bit of help when it comes to list building. Obviously, things are going to keep changing as new releases come out. Customizables are probably going to end up changing everything a lot, and that's like coming up pretty soon. There's always going to be the fall points update as well, so plenty to look forward to. And yeah, so Dave, I really, really appreciate you coming by to chat Empire with us. Um, Folks can sometimes find you on the That's No Moon podcast. It seems like
normally
they,
that's known have a Discord. That's probably the best place to get me.
yeah, that's right.
I'm
That's
on the
right.
main Legion Discord as well. I think I'm talked about on the That's Them On podcast every week, but I've only been on it like once or maybe twice.
Oh, that's it, really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
They just mention me every week and they talk about
I,
my wife and stuff all the time. But yeah.
yeah, I met your wife on the trip, and yeah, like as I told her, is that I give her a lot of credit. She's obviously a paragon of patience, given the fact
Yeah,
that
we've been
she
married
married him.
23 years. So yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And maybe that's the reason why you're not on that Snow Moon all the time is because like when you put you and Ollie onto a podcast together, there starts to
Uh,
be this like quantum singularity
Cockles would
of
lose control so bad. Me, Cockles, and Andy would be
right.
maybe bad times for Cockles.
It's yeah, it's too much personality to handle at once, right? You just lose control. But yeah, thank you again, Dave. Mike, let's go ahead and land this plane.
Yeah, this has been the Notorious Scoundrels, season 4, episode 17. I'm Mike.
I'm Evan.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Oh,
Oh
this
no!
guy. This guy.